Klaus, a member of the Woodville Mage Corps, froze in shocked silence. These words echoed through the room. Urey fired. He was ordered to explain why exactly. Commander Fowl, sitting at the table, calmly explained, Klaus simply does not understand the absolute power of the Mage Corps. A healer who can only use healing magic supposedly not needed for combat. The commander looked disdainfully while Klaus protested. He insisted that he had made a significant contribution with his healing magic, even developed new spells, and that his abilities were indeed a form of combat magic. In despair, he begged. He only needed one more 6-month term until his younger sister Karen finished the Knight Academy. The commander's face twisted with contempt. He spat to Klaus' side. He was a worthless mage, and Klaus should remember to be grateful for being kept in service for the entire term. The harsh words hit Klaus. He froze with wide-open eyes and could not breathe a sound. Sitting, he abruptly turned and walked away. The heavy door of the commander's office slammed shut behind him, cutting his face off from the light. As he retreated down the corridor, the last furious order of the commander still echoed from the room. Get out of here. The word talent spun in his thoughts. He remembered the day monsters killed his parents, leaving him and his sister Karen to survive alone. He joined the Mage Corps so she wouldn't have to fight alone, and remembered how they both felt pure joy when he was accepted. But now hope was gone. After the day's call, he joined the Corps and stood before the assembly. His name was announced: Klaus Finley. It was noted that his magical power was the highest in the Corps history, so the future promised colossal expectations. Having determined his abilities, he was ordered to place his hands on the crystal ball. The question hung in the air: would his power manifest as black combat magic or as red support magic? When he began to channel his energy, the ball neither darkened nor reddened. Instead, it burst with a dazzling golden glow. Commander Fowl, stunned by the unexpected color, stopped the order. Do not pour more power into the crystal. This colossal power turned out to be 3 distinct magical affinities: healing, ice, and fire. This display of his potential was deceptive. He bitterly realized, despite boundless magical reserves, in reality he could only use the simplest form of healing magic. This restriction defined his career. Commander Fowl publicly announced his appointment, a decision that stunned the other mages in the hall. Klaus was to be sent to the infirmary, but the commander assured everyone the pay and provisions would be fine. After the announcement, he threw a prison rough robe at Klaus. The commander declared, no such incompetence deserves either the red or black mantles of a true mage. This simple garment became proof of his failure. And so for the next 5 years that was his reality. He stood alone by the window, looking outside and recalling his attempts. He sought ways to adapt his healing magic for combat, but his ideas were never heard. He belonged to no faction, and was an outcast even in the very heart where he came with such great hopes. He announces his return to the procedural department but is immediately stopped by the sharp voice of Tamara, the head of the institution, who demands to know where he has been and orders him to hurry. An emergency situation has occurred. She shifts his attention to the patient, a face in bandages. A man named Rindami explains, she was attacked by a client in a brothel and now she has a terrible burn. Despite first aid, he fears the scar will remain. Seeing the extent of the damage, Klaus agrees to try treatment. He covers the woman's face with his hand, and a complex, flickering magical sign flashes on his palm. A sigil emerges on its fragments as he utters the healing spell. Rindami exhales in shock. He has never seen such a pattern. Klaus addresses the patient, asks if she hears him, and promises a full recovery. When the light from the spell fades, he tells the woman she can open her eyes. He recalls his lonely studies and realizes this is a type of healing magic he himself developed. The woman's eyes widen in amazement as she sees her own reflection. She touches her flawlessly restored skin, and in her gaze there is only pure relief and gratitude as she thanks him. Klaus smiles warmly, and inside his heart a thought flashes that this moment is what he values most. He twists his magic so that smiles appear on people's faces. His pleasure is cut short as soon as Tamira addresses him directly. She admits, although she planned to remain silent for Commander Fowl, it is now impossible to deny Klaus's healing ability surpasses hers. Nearby, the patient and Rindami burst with joy. They celebrate her amazing recovery. Rindami then turns to him, his face stern, and asks what kind of magic could have caused such an injury at all. This question triggers a memory. Commander Fowl, 5 years Aga, chooses luxurious amusements, gambles money from the Corps for his own benefit, and neglects his duties. Memory brings Klaus a poignant realization. He finally understands. Commander Fowl meant him specifically, as if he were a clueless Corps member. All this time, while he was diligently working, Fowl was just having fun, pretending to be interested in his reports and only stalling. He returns to the treatment room, anxiety on his face, and asks Tamara why the commander called him. Tamara firmly squeezes his hand, irritation on her face. She says she has been silent for too long while he was being led by the nose. She warns if he protests now, the situation will get even worse, thereby confirming his fear, which he did not dare to voice. He is dismissed. When the weight of this news finally settles, the now healed patient bows deeply and thanks him for 5 years of service. He looks at her. a barely perceptible smile of pain on her face, and he accepts the truth that he can no longer use his healing magic within these walls. He turns and walks away. Years. He and Tamara are the only two mages in their neglected apartment, working around the clock, tirelessly every night, keeping the treatment room running. He continues through the silence of the moonlit streets, and a heavy sigh escapes his lips. He truly believed that his healing magic would finally be recognized as truly necessary. Returning home, he hears the cheerful voice of his sister Karen. She happily greets him and explains she just arrived and is now preparing dinner. His gloomy expression meets her cheerful disposition. He asks her to sit down and says they need to talk. After he explains what happened, he sits with his head down and apologizes, calling himself a worthless brother. Karen immediately rejects his self-pity. She says everything he says is completely untrue. Her words send Klaus's thoughts spinning through the years. He recalls his relentless study of healing magic, how he used it while traveling to impress monsters, and how many people he healed completely, fulfilling the role of a healer. He also remembers his failures, the patients he could not save. Even then, their families thanked him for his efforts until the very end. This memory weighs heavily on him. Looking at his face, Karen insists he has no reason to apologize. She firmly says she always knew he gives himself completely. She continues, if his previous workplace was not suitable, he just needs to find another. Klaus is only capable of a quiet agreement and is still uncertain. Her mind races with possibilities. She asks about the guild and directly points to the Black Falcon Guild Yard. She says that it can take on monster taming tasks and confidently adds, the guild master, a man named Ursel, will take care of him. He expresses doubt, but she quickly interrupts, calming him with a bright smile. Everything will be fine. Her smile widens as she states with unwavering confidence that her brother is both strong and cool. To close the topic, she declares that she will vouch for him herself. Her unconditional faith leaves Klaus momentarily speechless. A faint blush appears on his cheeks. He recalls Karen's unwavering support. When she pushes her hair back, she declares her own determination to study diligently at Knight's Academy and calls them to stick together and strive for more. Her words of support always kept him afloat, even on days when others called him talentless, and he himself fell into despair. His thoughts again flee to the time when his parents died. It was Karen who found him, and since then her smile has remained a constant salvation for him. Returning to the present moment, he offers to help her in the kitchen. Karen protests. She says he is probably tired, but he insists, saying he wants to cook together with her. A warm smile spreads across her face as she thinks, he is her son. A quiet moment of shared happiness cements his determination. He wants to build a happy life with Karen. When night falls on their home, he already knows exactly what he must do to achieve this goal. The next day, inside the Black Falcon Adventurers Guild, the guild leader Ursel reacts to the news with complete disbelief. He was expelled and he loudly questions it. Klaus, he shifts his gaze to Klaus, who is sitting across the table. Ursel admits his own foolishness and explains. Since Klaus had only used healing magic with all his might, he had no reason to look into his other abilities. After that, Ursel officially invites Klaus to register with the guild, and Klaus, stunned, asks if the offer is truly sincere. Ursel leans forward with a lively wry smile and explains. The guild is a business. He says they have prepared a special main registration exam specifically for a problematic boy like Klaus, and now he will have to take it. He slides a document across the table, explaining. Previously, temporary registration was sufficient, but now a main one is needed to accept official requests and provide proof of his mastery. He says this folder is for that exam. Klaus accepts it with a determined, understood, and expresses gratitude. He accepted the conditions from the guild manager Ursula, who explained, the exam is an application for rank reduction. The rank Klaus will eventually reach will be decided by the time he returns. With a firm smile, Klaus confirmed he understood and immediately set off. But on the way, he stopped to concentrate. He closed his eyes and tightly clasped his hands. From the very beginning, he decided to go all in, mentally activating a whole range of powerful abilities. Regeneration for automatic recovery and enhancement, limit break to surpass the body's limits, divine awakening, and cellular rejuvenation. A soft pulsation of energy spread from him. His senses sharpened. He broke through the dense forest. The target was a fire lizard, a creature he had already fought. He was confident he could use magical detection to find his own. Suddenly, from the depths of the trees burst a bright flash of light, followed by a low rumble. It found something. But as soon as he looked closer, he stopped abruptly. A wave of incomprehension overwhelmed him. His confusion turned into anxiety. Nearby blazed not just a fiery lizard but a monster, the black salamander, a beast of level A to S. He felt its incredible power, much stronger than his target, and understood. Its magic was like that of several people merged into one. He did not know if it was already fighting someone. The destructive power of the beast was obvious. In the clearing below, Klaus saw the aftermath of its attack. The group of adventurers lay scattered and dead. He froze when he realized that against what he now suspected to be an S-rank monster, only one person was still alive. Without any hesitation, he rushed into battle. The attack of Black Salamander was momentarily stopped by an invisible force. Klaus began weaving a spell, a radiant sigil flared between his palms. He decided to use his own magic to divert the monster from the lone survivor. He grabs his back, acknowledging the colossal size of the creature, but does not hesitate. All his training and healing magic to destroy monsters has prepared him for this moment. He lunges forward, closing the distance to the beast. Flying up to the creature, he slams his palms into its skin and the magical sigil, flashing, comes to life under his hands. He directs the power straight into the monster's blood to quickly lower the temperature and freeze it from the inside out. The effect is instant and brutal. Ice explodes all over the salamander's body, after which it shatters into frozen fragments. When the icy explosions recede, he remains crouched, having unleashed his highest technique, extreme freezing blood. He stands up, wiping a drop of sweat from his forehead, and looks at the smoldering, frozen remains of the high-ranking monster. Relief washes over him in waves. He made it. Then his attention shifts to the only survivor from the previous group, a young woman who stared at him with eyes wide open in fear and unable to utter a word. He approaches her, declares that he has come to collect evidence of the monster's subjugation, and only then asks if she is okay. He apologizes for startling her and explains, there is an exam now, he needs proof of submission. He asks her permission to take the monster's magic stone, and the woman, stunned, can only manage a weak "I'll bite." When he turns away, a clear thought suddenly flashes in the woman's mind. She fixes her gaze on his back and wonders if he could be the legendary figure known only as Magic Emperor. As soon as Klaus returned to the guild after his Sss-Rank registration exam, he was faced with a task to tame a fire lizard. But as soon as he entered, he was hit by a surprise. Karen, who called his name and was shocked that he returned so quickly. A large crystalline object containing the body of a black salamander inside. He explains that he defeated the black salamander itself, not a fire lizard, and worries that this mistake may deprive him of the right to pass. Credentials are checked by the guild leader Ursel. He declares, failure is impossible. On the contrary, he solemnly proclaims that Klaus has passed and qualified as an S-rank guild member. Seeing the ranking of adventurers, Klaus points to himself and freezes in complete disbelief, asking how he can even be S-rank, a tier just below the highest. He says that in the whole country there are only a few adventurers of SS rank, so for most, S rank is the real top. After this, he breaks Klaus with an explanation and asks how he managed to defeat an S rank monster all by himself, and interrupts with words. Her face is stern as she emphasizes the size of his foot to defeat the S rank black salamander alone and return at such speed. This, by any measure, is an extraordinary achievement. He agrees and says, although the exam was for a lower rank, the reality of his achievement effectively makes him S-class. He acknowledges that the situation is atypical, but the result matters. His face trembles as he reviews the quest details. He understands, the request was really about the black salamander, so the information was deliberately misleading. Anxiety grips him. What if other adventurers have already met a terrible fate, and the entire quest is a trap? Leaving the booth, Klaus walks alone down the long, quiet corridor. He recalls, here they thanked him, but at Magic Core he was recognized as talentless and no one even listened to what he wanted to say. In front of the guild master, Ursel and Karen stood and watched him attentively. Ursel noticed that this guild operates differently. When he looked at the registration book, Klaus asked what profession to write for him and aloud wondered if magic swordsman would be an inappropriate choice. Ursel explained, a vague name like magic swordsman can be misleading when forming squads others will not understand. His abilities are more focused on supportive red magic or offensive black magic. Turning the pages of the book, Ursel continued the explanation and said that because of this, Klaus would have to be registered differently. The young traveler listened attentively, his face stern, was awaiting the decision. Then he looked up and beamed a smile, suggesting simply to create a new profession for him. Klaus flinched. He was taken by surprise. He was confused by this unexpected idea. His surprise did not fade when Ursel explained that there are no strict rules for professions. He recalled how even the magic swordsman class had not been created when he himself was an active adventurer. He gave an example. Aaron, the current leader of the Holy Knights, was initially recorded simply as a knight. But his holy attribute was so incredibly powerful that it became a defining feature reshaping his reputation and role. Applying this logic, Ursel noticed that the power of the blue cloak heals, and wondered why the Holy Knight had such an ability at all. Klaus's eyes barely widened at the hint. He was enlightened. The healing magic he once possessed was truly unprecedented for his former role. Seizing the moment, Ursel proposed a new title, Blue Magic Swordsman. Karen picked it up and agreed. The name suited him perfectly. With renewed determination, Klaus accepted it, officially requested to register under the new profession. He looks at his new guild card, and a wave of affirmation washes over him. He was just told to gather his suppliso. He reflects on how this profession, once a symbol of what he thought was his failure, has now become something purely his own. As soon as he steps outside the threshold, he is greeted by the bright and cheerful face of Karen. She runs up, squeezes his hands with excitement, and congratulates her brother on officially joining the guild. Later at home, he explains. Although he hoped to join the S-Rank Magic Swordsman division, his new status allows him to take special orders. Karen brushes off any doubts, insisting that this is quite natural given his true abilities, and adds that she thinks Blue Magic Swordsman sounds cool. She shines and tells him that this is a profession made just for him. Her unwavering support penetrates him, and he quietly expresses gratitude. To celebrate, they sit at a table full of food, together giving thanks before starting to eat. He praises the delicious food and says that Karen always finds time to cook for him, even when she is studying. He thanks her once again for her kindness. His gratitude sparks an idea, and he declares that he will cook for her the next day. Karen looks up surprised and asks if he is serious. Her surprise quickly turns into pure delight. She eagerly asks to bring a pork chop and suggests buying a strawberry tart to properly celebrate his acceptance into the guild. The next morning at Guild Hall, Klaus greets the receptionist with a cheerful good morning. She notices his good mood, and he laughs, admitting it is not only because of the delicious food he has. She smiles and explains that since he officially joined, requests have been pouring in one after another. She encourages him. With him on the team, the guild's reputation will quickly rise. He looks at her intently, a slight blush appearing on his cheeks. He firmly confirms that he wants to do everything as best as possibly, especially now that his abilities have been officially recognized. His sincerity throws her off balance. She exclaims that he should not say such things with that expression and admits it makes her want to hug him so much. She quickly recovers, apologizes for the outburst, winks, and hands him the day's tasks request exclusively for S-Rank adventures, which she is not indifferent to at all. They ask about Adamantid, a magical creature with an incredibly hard shell, high defensive power, and colossal physical strength. It dwells on Crane Mountain, west of the capital. The power of Crane Mountain has defeated the Adamantite. Adamantid lies conquered. Klaus stands nearby, amazed at how much his magic detection has improved. Now he can sense the approximate magical power of an entire country and decides to head back. As he turns to leave, the ground suddenly begins to tremble wildly. Frightened, he thinks it is an earthquake, and at that moment, from nowhere, an unknown, powerful magic appears. He found himself right in front of the source of this incredible power, a colossal reptile, a creature with a shell like a mountain of stone. It loomed over him, and its very presence pressed relentlessly. When the creature lowered its head, the air suddenly pierced with cold. He noticed its glowing red eyes and shuddered. It was not an ordinary adamantine. The beast let out a deafening roar that made the air tremble. Panic overwhelmed him as he realized how he could possibly fight such a mighty enemy while feeling completely outmatched. Then a real stream of cold air burst from the jaws, the ground around him instantly covered with ice. He was thrown back by the fierce cold. He froze, looking at the ruins and realizing the power of the creature with awe. It was his first time seeing a magical creature, so he understood. If he didn't stop it here, the nearest city would pay the consequences. Just as he had not yet managed to make a plan, the beast crashed down on him with its entire mass, rushed forward and struck with a roar. The blow knocked him off his feet, but inside him a strange wave unfolded as if a divine awakening. When his consciousness began to fade, he saw the creature preparing for another attack. He knew he had to act now before it was too late. He knelt down, focused the remaining strength, and summoned the high heels spell, wanting to fully restore his endurance and force the magical contours to open. A powerful burst of energy surged through him, and his hands flared with light. He felt his consciousness beginning to crumble. The world was about to go dark. The sensation was eerily familiar, as if he had been pulled into a repeating loop. And as soon as his sight faded, the adamantite monster let out one last agonizing roar, and its gigantic body crashed to the ground with a rumble, and its own consciousness faded along with it. He was gasping, wiping sweat from his forehead, until a wave of relief washed over him completely. He thought aloud whether this was already the sixth time he was experiencing this moment. The sixth cycle is. His gaze fell on the remains of the creaturethi had somehow shrunk to a fraction of their former size without any explanation. Seeing that it was still breathing, he decided it might be an unknown and dangerous species, so he took it into his item bag for safekeeping. Only he held the bag open when a small creature was sharply sucked inside with an unexpected squelch. He froze in amazement. It stretched and was completely drawn into the magical confines of the bag. Having obtained that strange creature, he returned to the Guild of Falcon Wings. He knew he had to show Ursula this dangerous adamantine-like being, yet he had no idea where would be the best place to reveal it. He approached the counter and called Jerry. When she turned around, he asked if Ursula was present. Jerry apologized for the wait and promised to immediately go get the guild leader. Soon Ursula appeared. At first, he decided that Klaus had failed the task to catch something alive. When Klaus began to explain, Ursula sharply interrupted him, asking with complete distrust if he really brought back adamantite. Somewhere behind, Jerry Muse noted, "This alien is a new kind of nuisance." He explains with a condescending, self-confident smile that the capacity of the bag item is determined by the magical power of its owner, and that adamantite simply would not fit in there. Klaus reacts to this with shock on H. When Klaus falls behind, he happily notes that he has enough magical power to be kept in the mage division. Klaus asks embarrassedly where he should release the creature. In response, Ursel suggests they head to the plains just beyond the castle walls. A few moments later, Klaus crouches down, opening his item bag. Ursel calls him by name and a low rumbling bursts from the bag. A creature emerges from the bag. Ursel freezes in shock and cannot believe her own eyes, claiming that this must be a new species of adamantii. Klaus is sweaty. He asks him to wait and asks if this is even possible. Ursel's gaze suddenly hardens. He asks if Klaus is addressing him Ursel and then declares, "This is a monster without a doubt." Then he shows the true form of the creature when it grows to colossal size behind him. It is not an ordinary monster, but a holy being, Jinbu, the guardian entrusted by Uroboros to protect the world from disaster. Heavy stone doors of the old, ruined building creak loudly as they open, and this raises the question of whether the long-held seal has finally been broken. At the Mado Empire headquarters, Aaron, leader of the Holy Knights, reports to Commander Fowl about troubling news. He says the effect of healing magic has weakened, recovery takes much longer, and worst of all, some people can no longer be healed at all. Fowl, snorting irritably, replies in the healing room that it does not concern him and he has nothing to do with it. He sits at the table and grumbles angrily to himself about how he lacks time and wonders why the red mages have relaxed. His thoughts scatter when a subordinate bursts through the door and shouts that this is an emergency. The man delivers his urgent report. Very close to the royal capital, a horde of monsters is gathering. Powell's mocking attitude disappears at that moment, replaced by wide-open eyes and shock as he comprehends the terrible news. Meanwhile, far away, Klaus was frozen, staring at the horizon where a colossal creature lies on it. He whispered as aloud, confirming what he sees. "This is the sacred beast Jinbu." Great Beast Eye opens. Her voice ancient and Maida sounds, confirming that this is Jinbu, one of the sacred beasts that protect the world of being from the legends of Uroboros. Uroboros releases a spark and a memory flashes in Klaus's mind. He returns to the two children who were nearby. The young girl says that her mother once read her a picture book about the demon emperor, and the boy adds, "It was very cool." Klaus understands knows this story. The story from the children's book unfolds in his thoughts. 1,000 years ago, humanity lived in fear of monsters. To save the world, the heavenly demon emperor set out on a journey to defeat the evil dragon Uroboros. After a long search, he finally reached his enemy. The memory intertwines with the image of the mother reading the same story to her children. Their small figures cast shadows against the backdrop of the enormous dragon. They recall the end of the story. The demon emperor, unable to destroy the great dragon Uroboros, decided otherwise to seal it. For this, he placed 4 enormous seals at the 4 cardinal points of the earth and commanded the 4 sacred beasts to guard them forever. The weight of the legend settled in his head. The deer-like creature before him spoke, its voice echoed with ancient power, confirming this was truly Zhenbu. Klaus froze, eyes wide with disbelief, staring at the living. Astonishment shattered to dust when Ursula's voice sounded fragmented and demanded to know why the creature was still not dead. Klaus calmly replied that he was currently actively restraining the flow of her magic. To do this, he covered the beast with his hands, casting a forced magical revelation spell, a complex weave of power that flared between his palms. The creature turned into a giant turtle. Ursula explained. When they found Jinbu, she was in terrible condition with strange red eyes, and the gem on her forehead was darkened almost to black. He recounted how they gathered high-quality magical stones. These were what helped her recover to that state. He noted Jinbu's eyes were initially black, so there must be a reason for this change. When Ursula spoke, Klaus felt a jolt. If the guild master is so agitated, it means he has encountered something incredibly serious. A deep understanding surged like a wave. It was Jinbu. It was the holy beast who healed his shell. As if in response to his thoughts, the giant turtle stretched out and slowly turned its long serpentine neck. Its wise eyes met his silent expression of gratitude. It passed between them. He froze in shocked disbelief and blurted out. The creature was speaking. Turning to Ursula, he asked with wide eyes if the holy beast could speak at all. Before Ursula could respond, a voice had already confirmed it, and it echoed directly in Klaus's thoughts. Holy beast Jinbu said that her voice could be heard and asked to convey the name of her interlocutor. He understood the voice was not just sounding, it was flowing directly into his thoughts. Gathering his strength, Klaus Finley introduced himself. Beside him, worried Ursula asked if he was all right. Klaus quickly waved it off. "No problems." Sveta Zveruka then apologized, explaining that she needed to return home. Her sister was already waiting. After that, she declared, if Klaus becomes her master, she will follow him. As she spoke, her gigantic figure began to glow and shrink, condensing into a tiny, palm-sized shell which completely stunned Klaus. Ursel watched the exchange of glances, amazed that Klaus was really talking to a sacred being. He concluded that this achievement must be reported immediately and they needed to return to the guild. He even assured Klaus that nothing threatened the holy beast and that he was handing him over into his hands. Surprised, Klaus accepted these duties. Later, in the silence of the room, the little turtle stirred on the pillow and opened its eyes. She glanced at Klosh was sitting at the next table, but already in simpler clothes. The sacred animal spoke to him and asked if he was all right, then noted with concern that he had eaten nothing. He holds the tiny creature and listens attentively as it expresses its anxiety. The sacred beast, Jinbu, admits he was afraid for his stomach, a feeling of uncertainty it had never known before. And he says this is the first time his heart has been moved so much by the master. He looks down at the creature, a drop of sweat appears on his temple, and it clarifies. Her voice reaches him precisely because he is her master. He asks if this is the only reason. The holy beastly creature explains, she has long waited for someone who can hear her voice of soul condition to become her master. She declares that Klaus is that one. First, he understands the meaning. Then Klaus smiles and asks if this means he can call her master permanently. The animal explains, it had only one master and it cannot change this fact. After that, it reveals a painful memory. It was separated from its previous master several hundred years ago. He is digesting this realization. He was called a master only because he healed her. The holy beast fondly remembers his former master as a wonderful person. Moved by his gentle, kind nature, Klaus becomes flustered and cannot compose himself, pondering how exactly their connection works. He abruptly changes the subject and asks the holy beast why he went into the route at first. The creature explains that the Ouroboros seal was broken, and the power that emerged from it caused him to lose his mind. Then it expresses concern for Klaus's well-being before revealing critical information. His sister, another of the four sacred beasts, sleeps deep within ancient ruins. It warns, time is running out and she will awaken too. A vision flashes in the mind of a dark entrance choked with vines leading to these ruins. He froze in shock while Jinbu explained the schedule. The four sacred beasts he showed stood in the east, west, south, and north-hand, all were centered around ancient ruins. Jinbu himself was one of them, and his mind was on par with the rest. This collective consciousness was a defense. If the evil dragon came to life, monsters would flood into the world and subjugate it. Jimbo noted, the scenario was exactly like in the pages of one picture book. The burden of this revelation weighed heavily on him. He wanted to help Karen, but a wave of uncertainty overwhelmed him. He became a traveler only to live quietly and peacefully with her, so what should he do now? His inner conflict burst into action. He slammed his fist on the ground, and the little armored beast turtle shuddered. He stated that he did not consider himself skilled enough to be her master and added that he had a sister to think about. Before he could unfold his thought, Karen rushed into the room, her face twitched with panic. She shouted a warning as if something was tearing her from inside. The Knights Academy is in trouble. They were heading towards the outer walls of the royal capital, a huge horde of monsters. The news threw him off for a moment. Jimbu nudged him from the pillow. They had to go. Karen added that Ursel was standing right in the center of the defensive line. Interrupting the conversation, Klaus apologized to Jinbu but insisted that he take him along. The little beast agreed without hesitation. He jumped noisily onto his shoulder. With firm determination, he threw them forward straight into the unfolding crisis. Massive stone gates. The situation was grim. A grotesque horde of monsters, goblins, winged beasts, and even worse poured through the breach, facing a line of defenders led by Ursel and Lorenzo. Arriving at the scene, they could only freeze in horror. The entire area outside the castle walls swarmed with monsters. Horror. Karen whispered while Klaus surveyed the spectacle, growling, grotesque creatures flooding the defense. Klaus freezes in shock when Lorenzo calls his name and with relief sees that he is indeed here. With the small creature Ouroboros sitting on his shoulder, Klaus surveys the surrounding chaos and realizes this is probably the result of the Ouroboros matchsticks effect. In the command tent, Irene, leader of the Holy Knights, turns to Ursel and asks who these people who just arrived are. Ursel introduces them. Klaus Finley from the Black Falcon Guild and Karen Finley, a knight in training. Fall immediately bursts into confrontation, declaring that he is useless in this situation. Klaus shudders and asks why he was even brought to the strategic meeting. Nearby, Lorenzo's face twists. With annoyance, he is irritated by the disrespect towards a guild colleague. He steps forward and challenges him, reminding that Klaus is an S-rank adventurer, not someone who can only use healing magic. After that, he turns to Klaus and declares that he will join the fight for his sake, then asks, first explain the situation. Taking command, Aaron outlines the strategy. The capital's forces are divided into two fronts. The first holds the main monster army and a second horde is already approaching from the rear. He notes that Klaus is in the second group. Lorenzo understands. If they manage to destroy the horde from behind, it will be much easier to handle the first. As the discussion continues, Klaus eagerly volunteers. He offers to be entrusted with clearing out the boss masters alongside Aaron's troops. Karen gasps in shock, while Fall and Lorenzo stare at one point, completely stunned by his confidence. In response to his bold statement, Aaron, the leader of the Holy Knights, took command. He acknowledged that he and his knights would handle the capital, while others should focus on defending the city from monsters. Addressing the invisible Klaus, Aaron gave his consent, noting that since Klaus defeated the Black Salamander, he could act as he saw fit. He accepted the terms without hesitation. While squeezing his fingers in front of his uniform, his face became firm with determination. The vision of Ouroboros froze on his shoulder. Klaus's decision was immediately challenged by Karen. She stepped forward and insisted on going with him to support him. At first Klaus refused, telling her to return to the city with Ursel, but her face was a mask of unbreakable determination. She gave up and agreed the only condition: she can join only if she works as a medic. Karen accepted his conditions without hesitation. When the matter was settled, they headed to where the holy beast Jinbu awaited. Klaus called out to the giant creature, asking for passage, and the large turtle-like being seemed to agree. While they were preparing to leave, Klaus glanced at the large procession of wounded and displaced citizens. Their heavy steps echoed dully throughout the entire space. They ride atop the giant shell Jinbu together with Karen, and Iren is nearby on horseback. But suddenly Klaus sharply commanded a stop. He pressed his hands against the shell, and below on the ground a fiery magical sigil began to form. A giant wave of power burst from the sigil, the spell Perfect Heal. It expanded into a huge circle, gently washing over the wounded people with life-giving restoration. His spell covered the crowd. The sparkling trail of light faded, followed by an overwhelming silence. Witnesses could hardly believe their own eyes. One man, whose wound had already disappeared, asked if he was truly healed. Another marveled at the immense scale of the magic, how so many could be healed at once. Karen also held her breath. She recognized the familiar glow and whispered how incredible it was. When the treatment was finished, he and Karen climbed onto Holy Beast Jinbu. As soon as the giant creature moved, its steps shook the ground. Klaus addressed those present and explained, "This is their transport for the crowd." One of the men watched them as they rode through the gate, and suddenly it dawned on him. It was Blue Hero. Settling on the embrasure, they moved forward. Karen looked at him and quietly whispered his name. As they approached the front line, the voices of the grateful crowd roared behind. Wreaths of hope rolled, shouting his full name, Klaus Finley. "We're counting on you." On the chaotic battlefield, where travelers fight creatures resembling wild boars, huge gates thunder open. In the darkness appears Klaus riding the colossal sacred beast Jinbu. He surveys the area with a stern gaze and, acknowledging the first platoon was almost destroyed, holds on to the belief that Ursel and the others will be fine. His gaze narrows as he focuses his thoughts and realizes what must now be his priority. The battle continues somewhere else in the forest. The second platoon is being overwhelmed by monsters. The commander roars to his men, "Retreat." From a distance, Klaus watches the knight's strategy. They cautiously bypass the possessed and strike only at the demonic beasts. A huge shadowy creature with piercing eyes gives the order. Other monsters raise the temperature of their blood. In the heat of battle, Ursel unleashes devastating power and shouts the name of his technique, Hell's Blood Scythe. Flaming flashes burst around him, covering the beasts, while another knight watches, stunned. He warns his men not to lose vigilance and says that the monsters are fire-resistant and still alive. Watching from afar, Klaus realizes with shock, Ursel somehow burns them from the inside out. He cannot believe that such a powerful individual exists in their country. Frozen by this news, he stands as if rooted to the spot. Suddenly, a young woman with a determined look sharply steps toward him. With a swift motion, she draws her sword and stands in front, ready to protect him from the roaring, bear-like monster charging at them. A brief thought of his sister Karen flashes through Klaus's mind. He imagines her effortlessly destroying a pack of small, cat-like creatures, and this feeling of calm washes over him. He could leave everything to her and she would manage. This thought disappears as the present threat regains its voice. Klaus spreads his arms and casts a wide magical detection spell. The earth responds with a dull, humming tremor. He senses monsters deep in the forest moving in formation, as if guarding something. Their target announces itself with a rumble that shakes the ground. From the forest emerges a gigantic bull-headed creature. Iren recognizes it as the Horde boss, the Minotaur King. He shudders in shock. This is an Sss-Rank monster too powerful for the Holy Knights alone to handle, so he calls for someone to lead the vanguard. In response to the knight's plea, Klaus turns his gaze to his own mighty ally. He places his hand on the sacred creature Jinbu and asks it to crush the boss. The great being acknowledges the request and accepts the task. The sacred beast can move, but the King Minotaur lunged forward with incredible speed and swung his giant axe, bringing it down on Iren. He barely manages to block the blow with his own sword, and the echo of the clash spreads through the air in shockwaves. The creature presses the attack, her body blazing with unbearable heat as soon as she activates the skill Extreme Heat Blood. The shockwave of the collision knocks Klaus off his feet. He flies and lands on the ground. Without hesitation for a moment, Iren prepares his own counterattack. He raises his blade and is about to release Holy Cross. While the knight prepares its holy strike, Klaus suddenly understands everything. This cannot be stopped as planned, and the attack will not work. With a focused gaze, he abruptly gets up and rushes forward headlong, passing through confused places where they have not yet managed to understand him. A sharp movement catches the gaze of the sacred beast Jinbu. The huge creature looks at the small group, Klaus, Iren, and the swordswoman, who stand stubbornly before the giant King Minotaur. The scene awakens a memory from ancient times. His memory rolls back to an ancient clash when the younger Klaus faced another powerful, stubborn beast. The sacred beast Jinbu reflects on the nature of the master and realizes, mere reverent attitude towards Klaus is not enough. He believed that one who cannot protect their people has no right to be called a master, a thought he perhaps never voiced directly. He recalls how that young man with a firm gaze always put the safety of others above all, fighting regardless of any risks to himself. At that moment from the past, Klaus landed right on his head a silent declaration of intent that Jinbu recognized with one mind. So this is Lord Klaus. Then a devastating force exploded, a technique released with a whispered name, Extreme Ice Blood. The icy energy struck not the enemy but Jinbu's own horn, and he instantly shattered into pieces. It was in this impulse that the holy beast understood everything. This was my master. As the memory of the ancient enemy falling down fades, the scene returns again to the present. The King Minotaur lies defeated, frozen in ice. Klaus steps away from the fallen giant, and the holy knights remain, only able to watch in stunned silence. Their shock turns into cries of disbelief. One of the knights shouts that Klaus defeated the boss, and now only weaker monsters remain. Hearing this, Klaus sharply turns around, embarrassed, and raises his hands in defense. He is not sweating from that, trying to downplay the incredible deed. He insists that he managed only thanks to their support, and that alone it would have been impossible to win. He deflects any glory from himself, stating that the true heroes are them. And the knights, looking at this, froze with expressions of sincere admiration. He stood amid the stunned silence of the holy knights, and they burst into a wave of praise. They shouted that he was incredible, that they had never seen anything like it. Klaus just listened, a little confused by their signature laudatory title. Their leader, Irene, approached him, the voice trembled with admiration and gratitude. He confirmed that Klaus had indeed defeated the Sss-Rank King Minotaur, keeping their losses almost at a minimum. When the fighting spirit surged upward, Irene declared, now they would handle the rest of the threats, and Klaus asked to explain everything in detail later. Stunned, Klaus could only remain silent. He quickly tried to change the subject, raised his hand, and declared that monsters still lurk nearby. After that, he announced his intention to use magical detection to survey the area, a convenient excuse to avoid further questioning. When he looked around, his gaze sharply caught the details around. His eyes opened wide, and something immediately alerted him. His investigation led to an amazing spectacle. He loudly shouted the name Karen and pointed towards the clearing where Jambu stood. The devoted animal responded to its master, and Aaron and the others turned around. In place of the two dead travelers, above their bodies stood a braided swordswoman. Running up close, they saw a young man desperately trying to wake an unconscious girl. Hold yourself together, he begged. Meanwhile, Klaus and Jinbu rushed to the scene. Klaus shouted the girl's name, full of anxiety, Karen. He fell to his knees beside the fallen girl, Karen. The braided fencer fighter explained what had happened. Karen had protected her from the monster's attack and might have been poisoned because of it. While she was speaking, a soft glow began to slowly grow from Klaus's hand. The glow pierced everything with a bright flash of restorative energy and completely enveloped Karen. The braided swordswoman froze in shock as Klaus calmly declared a full recovery. Under the wave of healing magic, Karen's eyes began to open. Then he shifted his gaze to another traveler, the braided fencer, whose face twisted in pain. She clenched her leg and felt her heart sink. The healing magic was not working. He froze, and a terrible realization froze on his face. His own powerful healing also did not work. It was not a simple injury, a curse. Somewhere far away, another traveler, Karen, whom he saved, clasped her hands with relief. She thanked Klaus, saying that thanks to him her father can now rest peacefully. The type of curse returned painful memory to Klaus. He remembered the time in Mage's division when he diagnosed a patient with the same ailment. Then he was powerless to find a cure. In the final stages, he recalled the grim prognosis. The curse will cause the victim's body to turn to stone, and this is inevitable death. Now he realized with horror, this is exactly the curse that torments Karen's companion. In the treatment room of the mage's ward, Klaus was watching over the unconscious fencer. Tamara, the head of the institution, entered holding a thick tome. She said she had been investigating this since the moment another traveler with the same symptoms died. She opened the book to the page with the snake-like, dragon-like creature. Ouroboros, she said, and asked if it was connected to the curse. Tamara explained, fragments from sealed ancient ruins break free and attack people in the surrounding area. Her research confirmed the effect. Everyone stung by a fragment of Ouroboros soon saw on themselves a black, curse-like pattern spreading all over their body. Klaus turns to his companion, the holy beast Jinbu, and asks if he knows anything. The little turtle apologizes, saying that although they are sealed instruments, they cannot recognize the Ouroboros seal, then adds a word of thanks and assures Klaus that he is fine. Suddenly it dawns, the revival of Stampede by Swordswoman is a warning, a signal that fragments of Ouroboros have mixed. He was deceived, and after that. Kamara finishes the thought aloud, with a gloomy expression on her face. She says that just like with other travelers, the woman with the sword will most likely begin to slowly turn to stone. The woman's words strike Klaus with horror. Tamara estimates she has about 2 years left. This limit triggers a wild whirl in Klaus's mind. He remembers his sister, Karen. He looks for even a crumb of hope in Tamara, but she says directly, there is no known cure. However, when she places her hand on the book, a thin crack appears in the possible. She explains that there are records 200 years old in the neighboring country of St. Folia, and tells how one of the saints from there managed to successfully break the Uroboro curse. While the swordswoman rests, Jingbu adds that the saints of St. Folia have protected the Ouroboros seal for generations. He suggests that the current saint might know how to break the curse that causes Karen to be knocked back by this blow every time. His determination only grows stronger. Klaus declares that he will go to St. Folia. Just as he turns to leave, Tamara calls him to stop. She explains that Sveta from St. Folia is not someone you meet so easily. Unafraid, Klaus cheerfully asks her to contact her acquaintances and promises to wait a few days, giving her a bright, sincere thank you for her help. Then he states that in the meantime he will check if he can do something with his own blue magic. Tamara sharply interrupts, warning him not to act blindly. His determination hardens. While the braided swordswoman solemnly gives him the oath, only one goal remains in Klaus's mind. He must break the curse of Ouroboros. Before Klaus can step forward, a giant salamander-like creature looms over him and it is entirely engulfed in flames. Nearby, a young woman with long dark hair freezes in awe. She understands. Here he is, the one she has been searching for. The golden magic within him is special, and she cannot believe that he has appeared right before her. Her mind races, what she received from the guild about the defeat of the Minotaur King during the stampede. She came to investigate and swore to find the culprit, the one she considers the demon emperor. While her thoughts rage, Klaus, whose face is partially hidden, asks if she is okay and remarks that someone like her might save the world. Leaving the fight behind, Klaus walks through the healing buildings of the Mage Guild. His face is gloomy and focused. He knows he must find a way to lift Karen's curse. Lonely footsteps quietly echo as he moves through the narrow, quiet corridor. The conversation is interrupted by a voice calling his name. It is Aaron, the leader of the Holy Knights, who approaches Klaus with a worried look, asks if Karen is safe and says that Tamara informed him about the situation. Glancing into the neighboring room, sorrow casts a shadow on his face. The braided sword that woman lies motionless on the bed, and near her head settled a small turtle-like creature. Aaron sadly notes she is still asleep. Turning to Klaus, he advises not to overexert himself for Karen's sake. Noticing Klaus's exhausted state, Aaron hands him a package of food, saying Klaus probably hasn't eaten and suggesting they have dinner together. Klaus silently accepts, quietly thanking him. Sitting together at a small table, Aaron explained that he wanted to discuss with Klaus a matter separate from Karen's condition. Looking intently at him, he directly asked Klaus why he was dismissed from the Mages Guild. He acknowledged the harsh truth about his situation. He was considered useless after all, he only knew healing magic. Because of this, his pay was half that of others. Aaron is stunned. He finds it hard to believe that Commander Fowl would treat someone so capable, who saved so many lives, in such a manner. Their tense conversation breaks off mid-word. From the neighboring bed, a faint quiet moan escapes. Both men turn sharply and Klaus calls the name, Karen Sam. The bed, the woman's gaze with the intertwined sword, her eyes twitch and suddenly open wide. She looks around, confused, and quietly wonders where she is. She suddenly sits up, shocked that two men are in front of her. "What is this?" she exclaims. Klaus calmly explains she is in the healing room of the Mages Guild and asks how she feels. Then her attention is immediately drawn to something on her own arm. When she freezes, staring down, her eyes widening with fear, Klaus's voice reaches her. He says sternly, "This is a curse." Her gaze is fixed firmly on the dark, twisted locked symbol now branded on her forearm. Klaus says she received it while protecting someone during the battle. Then he delivers terrible news. The curse is slowly paralyzing her arms and legs, and he is powerless to heal it. Iron asks if there are any other treatment methods. Klaus says Tamara gave him materials about healing performed by the Holy Folia, but he knows almost nothing about it and cannot say much. There is little hope. When he thinks to himself that all his hard work was only for Karen's protection, his face twists in agony. He stands by her bed, consumed by the thought that he was worthless precisely when it mattered most. From the bed, Karen quietly responds to his silent despair. Her voice makes him apologize, and he calls himself a miserable brother. His self-contempt takes her by surprise. Her eyes widen slightly. Her surprise changes to a bright, reassuring smile. She suddenly sits up straighter and declares that she is fine and can move without any problems, so much so that Klaus and Aaron are shocked. He freezes, unable to process what he sees, and can only whisper her name, Karen. While he struggles with disbelief, Aaron steps forward and reminds that Karen saved many of his soldiers. The leader of the Holy Knights swears full cooperation and suggests everyone speak calmly. Klaus, still processing what he heard, expresses gratitude. Karen interrupts him and speaks directly to her brother, her face soft. She insists that she is fine and says it is time for him to return home. To emphasize her thought, she takes his hands in hers. Her soothing smile holds steady, not faltering in rhythm as she looks at him. Her determination is unwavering. She decides she will find help from Svedesa and devote herself to further research on treatment methods. Tears ran down her face as she looked at Klaus. He met her gaze with unshakable resolve. Clasping his hands before him, he gave a solemn vow he would be the one to heal her. Through tears, she confirmed his promise, insisting that he must do it. You release a quiet, thoughtful sound of approval. He sat by her bed and took her hand. The dark, intricate patterns of the curse sharply reminded them of the ailment they had to fight together. Several days passed. Klaus knelt before Karen, explaining that from that day on he would conduct experiments seeking a way to cure her. He unfolded his theory. Where her curse magic and his own power intertwine, he could try to cast magic directly. Karen confirmed his observation. She felt only a slight tingling but no tangible effect. Yet he continued, until suddenly she screamed sharply, her face twisted in pain. She apologized and explained. This time the sensation was painful and numb, a clear sign the attempt was failing. And she lamented that despite his daily research, no positive results were visible. The defeat left Klaus helpless. He had no idea what to do next, and he was tormented by the thought that there had been no news from Amara yet. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of a doorbell. He approached the door, opened it, and apologizing for the delay, called out. A woman with long dark hair stood on the threshold. He asked in surprise who she was. Suddenly overwhelmed, the mysterious woman abruptly wraps her arms around him in a tight embrace and, joyfully shouting his name, cannot hold back tears of happiness. She is radiant. She has finally met him. Completely bewildered by the sudden physical contact, he twitches and stammers, asking what is happening. Catching her boldness, she instantly pulls back and apologizes, begging him to let her go. The noise draws others from inside the house. Karen appears and asks her brother what happened, while another young man with spiky hair demands to know who this stranger is. Now the woman is accompanied on both sides by two uniformed companions. She bows deeply. She gives Klaus an official apology for her incredibly rude behavior, expressing her sincere. Straightening up, she solemnly and confidently introduces herself. She announces that her name is Serafina Dale and that she is the second Saint Sinofolia. Klaus's eyes widen sharply in shock. He recalls how Tamara mentioned the saint and cannot understand why such an important figure went all this way to see him specifically. Just as he failed to open his mouth, Karen steps forward and asks Serafina if she knows about Ouroboros. Serafina confirms, yes, and that is exactly why she is here. After that, she politely asks if they would agree to listen to her story. Having agreed to listen to her, the whole group sits down at the table. One of Serafina's supporters hands Klaus an official letter, asking him to read it first. He looked at the document and a vision flashed in his mind. A woman in a snow-white dress and veil, hands folded before her. She called herself Maria Folia, the great saint of Sinofolia. Then the vision of the great saint spoke directly to him. Her voice rang with clear purpose. She begged him, as the master of golden magic, to unite with the sacred beast, seal Ouroboros, and protect the world she called the current demon lord. The burden of her words made the braided fencer explode. Shock and rage mixed on her face. She demanded an explanation for why Klaus, one who sealed the legendary demon lord, is now being asked to be the next. In response to Seraphine's outburst, she calmly began explaining the circumstances, gesturing towards the world map, saying that the world is in chaos and the four nations of Sinofolia stand at the very center of it all. She continued and delved into the history of their service. As she explained, Sinofolia had to calm Ouroboros. Once the country of Arlen sealed it, but after several hundred years the seal finally broke. When the seal was finally torn off and the holy beast was lost, she told about their desperate situation. Every time Ouroboros broke into the world, they had to find a person who possessed the same golden magic as the original sealer to imprison him again. Klaus digested this colossal news and asked, "Is the saint's goal to protect the Ouroboros seal?" The braided fencer immediately picked up, "Is that exactly why they came here from so far?" Serafina confirmed that he understood her. She said that her state uses crystals that can measure the power of the demon lord worldwide and that they are now using them to find him. She extends a glowing pendant to Klaus and asks him to direct just a little of his magic into it. He feels sick when the magical test from 5 years ago comes to mind. He remembers how, unlike others whose magic manifested as red or black, only his was illuminated by golden light. Serafina confirms. This is what they were looking for, and explains that the pendant he received 2 weeks earlier is what finally allowed them to find him. The blow of realization stuns him with such force that it takes his breath away. Inside he thinks, what if this means he has inherited the power of the Lord of Demons? Serafina quickly rejects his assumption and insists that he is not the demon lord. Instead, she, like Klaus, imploringly asks him to help them seal Ouroboros again. His thoughts again come up against another urgent matter. He emphasizes, they also need to lift the curse troubling his companion. He knows they already understand this. Serafina nods but immediately stresses. Their main mission cannot tolerate delay. If they linger, the world will be overwhelmed by monsters. She continues, the curse can only be lifted by defeating Ouroboros. The problem, as she reveals, is that from the very beginning the creature was never truly killed, it was only sealed each time. Lao stops there and recalls, even Saint Tamara could not lift the curse. Meanwhile, while he is pondering, Serafina interrupts saying, in fact, there is another way to lift it. She explains, this method is to obtain the scale of the holy dragon Kirin, a creature that stands as the direct opposite of Ouroboros. She continued her explanation, admitting that finding Kirin was incredibly difficult and that she did not know the method. Klaus and the young swordswoman listened, stunned, as she clarified that the existence of Kirin was shrouded in mystery. Unlike the holy beasts, it is said this creature's sole purpose is to directly seal Ouroboros. Then the story suddenly turned personal. She said that the curse had struck her own father was once under Klaus's care. At that time, her mother went to find Kirin to save him but never returned. Klaus's eyes widened in shock. And the memory of the incurable patient suddenly clicked into Placide was her father. Her gloomy expression disappeared instead, a radiant, determined smile flashed. She declared, now everything is different. She became a sanctuary and Klaus the Lord of Demons, and with her power combined she was sure they would find a cure. The woman with the sword, though hesitant, nodded quietly. Then Serafina suggested everyone discuss the matter of Kirin with the great saint, pleading for her to agree. She pressed on and proposed to immediately arrange a meeting with the great saint and return together to Centifolia. She also asked for permission to speak with Kirin and the rest of the guild, to which the warrior swordswoman easily agreed. Laos looked confused by the sudden flurry of plans and aloud wondered where they should even start. Serafina just smiled, reassuring him not to worry, after all, he was their benefactor. As he watched her walk down the corridor away, clarity settled in his chest. For the first time in a long while he felt a spark of hope. Finally, the path forward became visible. He turned to the swordswoman, his face had already become firm, filled with determination. Placing his hand on her shoulder, he announced his decision. He would go to Centifolia to ask the great saint for help. He informs his sister of his decision. His gaze calm and confident, she clenches her fists and quietly agrees. Meanwhile, in Woodville Castle, Faltino from the Mages Guild stands before the king. Kiefer thanks him for his efforts and for the substantial batch of endurance restoration potions he recently delivered. He dismissively rejects the praise, but his face immediately changes, cunning in his eyes as he starts a new conversation. He asks King Kiefer if he has heard the news about the traveler who single-handedly defeated the Minotaur King. The king's gaze sharpens as he presses the adventurer, demanding his identity. It is clear he is nervous, and he stammers that he does not know anyone like that. He leans back on the throne and his voice resounds authoritatively. Approaching Fowl, he informs him he has been entrusted with an important task and it is he who must carry it out. Without hesitation, Fowl accepts the order. Then the monarch names the person he was seeking, Klaus Finley. He orders Fowl to personally recruit this young man into the Mages Guild. His eyes widen in disbelief, and a wave of shock covers his face as he comprehends the king's order. At that very moment, Klaus stands in the shop, gathering supplies for his journey. A pause and a thought flashes in his mind, stinging with bitter irony. After exile, he is now being called back. In the procedure room, under the starry sky, Tamara reads the letter and freezes in surprise. She whispers to herself she can't believe she is learning about the third saint, and that it is all connected to a promise made to the great Saint Centifolia. She reads the letter several times, and at that moment Klaus arrives. He admits he was also surprised to be summoned. Tamara turns to him holding the wax-sealed envelope and confirms this is the letter she was told about. While he examines the contents, his facial expression becomes increasingly serious. The key phrase echoes again and again in his mind, the belief that he can be useful to the person he is now. Thank you for the information, but Tamara watches him with an understanding look. She says his desire to help is so strong that his heart is almost transparent and his intentions are pure and visible to all. Seeing his sincere, stubborn decision, Tamara decides to give him a farewell gift for the road. She says she wants to tell him a story. The divine returns to painful memory. She recalls a time when she was overwhelmed by a magical creature so cruel that she lost the strength to fight. She was locked in a healing room, feeling as if she had abandoned her duties as a mage. Helpless in the very midst of chaos, Henry sharpens a weapon and the bandaged man screams for help. A much younger Klaus steps forward, telling the seated patient that he can manage on his own. After that, the boy rushes forward, snatching a fiery, glowing magical artifact from someone's hand. Tamara, in shock and fear, calls out his name. Always grasp the dangerous light, it fades. Young Klaus turns with a bright smile as if to say the danger has passed. Tamara scolds him for recklessness. As the memory fades, her thoughts in the present summarize. It was then she decided that protecting Klaus's good heart was more important than her own pride. House, his cheeks slightly reddened, pondered Tamara's skill. He thought she was truly an incredible user of healing magic. This thought solidified into a vow. He stood under the starry sky. He promised to master the healing arts taught by Tamara, to heal Karen, and to prevent vile monsters from harming anyone else. The next day, when his little dragon sat on his shoulder, Klaus informed Karen that the guild would be closed for a day while they prepared for departure. Ursel approached them and asked if Karen would leave together. After that, he addressed Klaus directly and revealed a shocking truth. His family, the Albertis, was a clan of guardians sworn to protect the sacred beast Jinbu. Impressed, Klaus could only ask if he meant the demon lord. Ursel clarified that their role was only to watch over the sacred beast, admitting, if the demon lord appeared, they might not cope. Then he asked Klaus if he knew exactly where the demon lord was. Klaus quietly confirmed that he did. Hush, interrupted the creature sitting on Klaus's shoulder and said, the holy beast Jinbu will be resurrected simultaneously with the demon lord. Ursel confirmed and added, near the sacred land where the beast sleeps lives a clan of guardians. Then he revealed his true purpose. His duty was to protect the seal, but the sudden appearance of the demon lord could force him to side with the holy B-side under the pretext of a divine mission to cleanse the world. He officially asked Klaus to allow him to join their journey as Jinbu's guardian. The revelation struck Klaus so hard that everything shook. He was seized by a sudden realization. Ursel's lineage had been preparing for this for generations, and he himself, unknowingly, was searching for the Chilan horn with the help of such devoted people. Ursel looked intently at him and added, his duty as a guardian is unwavering and he cannot abandon it. He weighs Ursel's proposal, acknowledging that he himself can no longer continue on his path. With a serious face, he officially accepts, says he understands, and eagerly looks forward to their cooperation. Having made the decision, he walks through the city together with his sister, Karen. As they move on, a heavy silence hangs between them. They gather with Jerry and Klaus entrusts his sister to his care. Jerry responds with a clear, confident smile and assures him he can entrust everything to her. Then Klaus turns to Karen and says that it is time for him to go. She raises her eyes to him, calls him big brother, and hesitantly asks if she will really be able to join him later when she recovers. Jerry gently intervenes and tells Karen that she should rest for now. She replies with a warm smile that she would like Karen to stay with her a little. She silently agrees to Jerry's proposal. She understands this is the best plan. Seeing the path ahead, she realizes that in her current state she cannot go alone. Her face changes radically, determination hardens in her gaze. She looks him straight in the eyes and makes a promise. As soon as she is healed, they will set off on a joint adventure. Her words instantly tear out a joyful shift in his mood. He nods eagerly and describes to them a bright future, journeys to unknown lands, festivals, street food, and victories over monsters. When she asks if he is really serious, he confirms with a big smile, of course, we will do just that. The two of them are like travelers. While he was preparing to set off, the braided swordswoman who had joined his squad shone with a radiant, starry smile. She cheerfully confirmed her decision and said that if he was going to engage in adventurous things, she would gladly keep him company. When he set off on the road with Ursel, Klaus waved goodbye, promising that he would definitely return. Their journey began under a vast sky covered with clouds. They were sitting astride their large lizard-like steed. Urzul, with a relaxed smile, noted that riding Jinbu was surprisingly comfortable. Seizing the moment, Klaus asked his companion to tell more about himself. Ursel began his story and said that he had already been to Cynifolia. He lived there until he turned 15. He admitted that he never even imagined that he would ever go on such a journey. He continued, and his gaze was distant. It was clear that since childhood he had often been told about his life's purpose. Hearing this, Klaus became serious. He admitted that he had his own powerful need to become stronger, explaining, it was not just about his feelings to help his sister Karen. He needed strength to succeed in breaking the Ouroboros seal, especially because the saints were helping him, even though he barely knew them. Ursel weighed the words, then said that strength is an unknown quantity. A memory of their departure surfaced. Ursel, seeing the armored swordswomen, invited her to mount their horse and ride with them. While they were making their way, Ursel asked if their target was the capital Cynifolia. Klaus confirmed but explained the path was blocked. Due to a recent crush, monsters appeared. And at that moment, a giant two-headed wolf beast burst forward toward them. Woven's swordsman let out a cry of alarm. Bramlina the fencer reacts instantly. She lunges forward and soars into battle with her blade. Her enemy defends by growing sharp black spikes from their own Skina technique called Extreme Ice Blood, while Klaus and Ursel watch in shock. After the monster was knocked down and lies motionless on the street, the road is free for a while. Klaus sharply turns to Ursula, urgently asking if they can detour and visit Tamara on the outskirts of the city. He insists. There is something vital she must teach him immediately. He agrees with a smile, gestures forward, and orders Klaus to go first. In the silence of the office deep within the large building, Klaus's sister Karen sits at the table holding her chin in her hand, seemingly lost in thought, quietly whispering her brother's name with anxiety. Her thoughts are brutally interrupted as the doors burst open with a bang. Commander Storm storms into the room. His face twists with anger and he shouts, demanding to know if Klaus Finley is present. He bangs his fist on the reception desk, demanding the name and case of Karen. He brushes her off as a cheeky receptionist and orders to bring Cloud Stammer immediately. She rises, determination in her gaze turning into a challenge, and she grabs Foul's hand with unexpected strength, telling him she has nothing to say to someone without manners and common sense, and commands him to believe her no other way. She acts without hesitation. Her hand closes on Commander Falsey, and instantly a wave of icy cold envelops his fist, spewing torn ice. Her hand flashes with an icy glow as she shows a wide, eerie smile. The bird screeches and recoils from the deadly cold. Angry, he demands to know what she is doing with his sweet waitress receptionist. But Karen only asks what business he has with her. Watching the exchange, Jerry froze. A drop of sweat appeared on her forehead. She did not hear the spell because she understood. Both brothers and sisters are incredibly strong. He does not care about the cold and directly says that he is looking for Klaus Finley, who is believed to be connected to this crime. Before he could continue, Karen swings her free hand and slams it against the post with a bang. She declares that Klaus is probably in the capital, Maltino, and vows to catch this helpless fool with her own hands. Her passionate statement ends. Suddenly the silence becomes disgusting. With a seductive smile, Karen turns to the frightened Jerry and asks if she told her brother. She adds that she needs to have a proper talk with Klaus. The aura grows with such a threatening force that Jerry noticeably shrinks in fear. Then she returns again to the registration desk, and her tone softens a little. She tells Jerry that the other travelers are most likely not coming back, but asks him to stay on duty just a little longer. As soon as Jerry agrees, Karen goes to the window and looks outside. She thinks that her brother has probably already arrived in the country. A memory surfaces from the depths. She was 5 years old when she found out that she and Klaus are not blood relatives. Her thoughts drifted back to a childhood conversation. She remembered how she explained to little Klaus, since they are not real brothers and sisters, they can always be together, even without a blood connection. If they love each other, she reasoned, then they can be together forever, and this logic innocently led her to the question about the very idea of marriage. This memory surfaced in the present. She recalled the childhood happiness of learning then she could have become his bride. But now she has to admit, he cherishes her like a little sister. And yet a new hope flickered in her heart. If her wish came true and they both became travelers, maybe everything could have turned out differently. This hope fueled a silent, stubborn desire. Once holding him close to her heart, she quietly wished that he would finally look at her, only at her. Holding this secret dream inside, Klaus looked into the distance. His face revealed nothing. Deep in his soul, his feelings remained unspoken. Riding on Jinbu's back, Klaus and Ursel approach a lonely wooden cabin hidden in the thicket of a sun-dappled forest. Dismounting, they inspect the dwelling. Klaus peers into its modesty, and understanding flickers in his eyes. This is why they needed this remote place. Approaching the cabin, Ursel asks if Klaus knows whose house it is. With a serious expression, Klaus confirms, yes, and it must be the House of Fowl, the former commander of the Magic Division. The answer noticeably shocks Ursel. He responds to the boy's assumption and explains that they are here to see Morse Kenbridge, a man whose fame stands as a genius of magical manipulation. The name hangs in the air, surrounded by an aura of colossal power and intellect. House freezes from the revelation, thoughts racing to digest the news. Ursel continues and adds, Morris is a representative of the respected Albert family. The introduction is made. He abruptly swings open the creaky wooden gate and gestures for Klaus to enter the workshop. The way he greets them is pure organized chaos. A man with long light hair sits with his back to them, completely absorbed in his work among piles of books, papers, and strange mechanical parts. His beloved hands hover over the complex device, a panel with a large central disk and numerous buttons. He quietly whispers to himself, as if making the final, delicate adjustment. The man for a moment, Ursel turns to Klaus with a frustrated sigh, explaining that the launch of a new superdimensional communication device has caused a massive influx of requests, and they will never finish at this rate, gesturing vaguely at the clutter and telling Klaus to find a place to sit. In the workshop, Klaus officially introduces himself to Morse Cambridge, who is sitting opposite. The solitary genius slightly turns his head, acknowledges the introduction, and confirms that Klaus is indeed him. Before the conversation could ignite, another voice bursts in. An elderly man with a sharp gaze reports that he heard from Tamara about their request to meet with Saintess, but also that he was asked to personally evaluate Klaus. Wasting no time, he smiled and his face stretched into a grin as he threw down a challenge to Klaus right here and now, a competition. Such a sudden proposal left Klaus completely stunned. They stepped out onto a clearing just outside the workshop. The old man explains why he conceived it this way. In his belief, the true character and strength of a person are revealed only during direct confrontation. As soon as he finishes the explanation, the ground beneath the old man remains behind. He rises into the air, enveloped in a pillar of light. He waves to Klaus, calling to start, and looks up with disbelief. Klaus immediately understands. The power being demonstrated here is incredible, far surpassing anything he has ever seen in any active adventure. The impressive display of power provokes an instant, furious reaction in Ursel. He growls that this is absolutely not what was agreed upon and reminds the old man, Klaus was supposed to be tested, not him. Calmly loading, the old man simply laughs. He yields and admits the truth, announcing that Ursel, the guild leader of Woodville and the head of Blackwing Falcon, will be his deputy in the duel. After that, he orders Klaus to prepare and the young man agrees. In response, Klaus focuses all his power. A complex magical sigil flashes in his hand, and he calls upon a series of abilities reaching Limit Break and Divine Secret Awakening. A mighty dark-bladed sword appears in his grip. Opposite, Ursel is already ready, weapon drawn, face stern. He raises his hand, gesturing for Ursel to wait, but the guild head declares he will strike first to feel the flow of the battle. With unexpected speed, Ursel closes the distance. His dark blade is already flying into action. Suddenly, a powerful swing tears Klaus's cloak to shreds. He immediately understands he cannot allow Ursel to touch him. He feels the power flowing out of him as if it is being drained. He recognizes the effect, black magic drain spell sucking out. Gritting his teeth to overcome the debilitating sensation, he casts the high heal spell, and he understands. This is the power of the demonic sword Ursel Shiva. He tears back, increasing the distance. He understands that he won't be able to cast spells if Ursel touches him directly. Ursel watches him with a confident, cheeky smile, asks if he is already finished, and emphasizes that Klaus still hasn't even started the counterattack. The guild leader continues his taunts and asks if Klaus will just let him enter the rear. Klaus admits that fighting an opponent who thinks is not easy and decides there is no other way must accept the challenge. And as soon as he does, Ursel performs a sharp backflip backward. In response, a complex magical sigil flares up before him. He succeeded. The completed spell suddenly shoots forward and hits Ursula right in the back. The guild master shouts in surprise while the old man watches everything with lively interest. For Klaus, the world grows dim, he loses consciousness. Spell-forced magical release disperses from behind Ursel. He jerks into a sitting position, confused, says what Klaus did, and insists as if he bounced off the blow. But Klaus lies unconscious on the ground, unable to respond. He had already recovered after the duel and was now explaining to Ursel and Morse Cambridge the nature of his unique magic, showing a glowing magic circle. Klaus clarified. He needed to draw it in advance because activation takes time but uses very little magical energy. Technique is success, he declared. Ursel nodded in understanding. Then the dejected Morse asked what he should do. They had lost the bet. Klaus reassured him, admitting that he was unable to use any other form of magic except this one. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a stern elderly man. He approached them from the neighboring building, warmly smiled, and raised a small, exquisite device, showing it to them. He explained that this object is a magical instrument, a communication machine that extends range by means of a fixed portion of magic flowing into all its circuits. The old man said that if Klaus can master directing his magic into it, he will definitely become stronger. When he extended the device, Ursel lunged forward and ordered Klaus to wait. Then he turned to Morris and told him to do his job. Klaus nodded, but Ursel's intervention left him with a bewildered expression. His attention remained on Morris the whole time while he interrogated, clearly angry, and asked why he agreed to such an inhuman amount of work. Klaus watched silently and confused. He did not understand what was happening between them until the old man showed a large box filled with dozens of the same communication devices. Then the old man clarified the situation. The recent monster escape created a traffic jam, so these magical tools were extremely needed by many people. He continued, without these communication devices, people face disaster. The map lit up. It showed how monsters blocked the routes between settlements, cutting off all possible connection. His explanation ended. The old man's gaze warmed as he looked directly at Klaus. He told the young man that he saw traces of his efforts, a path his magic had laid, and he emphasized. Klaus was training not for himself but for someone else. That is why he must continue. A flicker of surprise and understanding flashed in Klaus's eyes. He immediately agrees to the task. Nearby, Ursel sighs quietly, looking exhausted. Ursel immediately objects and offers help, but the old master silences him. He says that Ursel's method of saturating with magic is too crude and will yield a completely different result. However, he smiles to himself and thinks that he would like to work in the magic core where Morris was. The old master again draws his attention and explains. Control and speed are good, but the most important thing is to make the flow of magic even. He asks if Klaus understood how he just used his own magic. He unfolds an explanation, saying that his eyes are sharp enough to imagine the very flow of magic. Raising one of the communication devices, he orders Klaus to try directing his power at him as a test. When Klaus pours magic into the device, it crackles and hums with power. The old man explains the mechanics. A fixed amount of magic must be run through in a thin stream and for a long time to stretch the communication range. One properly enchanted device can reach up to 10 kilometers. The test, he says, is to successfully enchant 10 of these at once, then the total range will be 100 kilometers. Given parameters, he officially demands that Klaus complete a large number of devices. Holding the communicator, Klaus eagerly accepts the challenge, promising to do his best. His initial enthusiasm fades, giving way to a more serious assessment. He understands, with his current ability, he can enchant only 5 of these devices. The process itself is like exhaling a long, steady breath of magic. He steels himself, declaring that he intends to complete the task. Nearby, the old master advises Ursel not to waste magic, but Ursel seems to be fixated on the 7 devices he has already managed. His determination is fueled by the memory of Karen. She held one of the devices and explained that with it they could reach important people. After that, she promised him complete support as her master and he immediately accepted it. Relying on that memory, he focuses all his energy magical flashes flare around the device in his hands, and it glows brightly while Ursel watches from a few steps away. In the workshop, Ursel lifts the device he successfully enchanted and beams with a victorious smile. Klaus looks from the other side of the table, cluttered with parts. Shock is on his face, eyes wide open. He proudly tells the master that the work is finished. Almost immediately, Klaus intervenes, reporting that he has also completed his task. The old man examines their work and nods approvingly. He notes that they managed to light not only 10 but all 15 devices, a great help. Announcing that they both passed, he offers their next task, to try conducting magic through the magic sword. In response, Ursel summons the mighty weapon. A large dark blade with a serrated edge appears in his hand, sparkling with a powerful aura as he shouts its name, Magic Sword Shiva. The striking glow emanating from the blade is incredible. Klaus freezes, stunned to the limit, and suddenly realizes Ursel's depth of magic is on a completely different level. He feels without any doubt. Under the current circumstances, he simply cannot defeat him. Just as he is still digesting the impressive display of power, the old master orders him to form a magical formation using both hands. Confused, Klaus tries to clarify the command, but the master simply pushes him forward. Nearby, a healing light flickers faintly. Having followed the order, he stretched out his hands and shuddered. 2 radiant magical circles appeared right in the air before him. Instantly he understood. Now he can deploy 2 formations at once, something he had never managed before. Ursel watches. Irritation flickers on his face, and he mutters that he wants a rematch. Despite him, excited Klaus asks the master if he can continue training in Cynifolia, even if Morris is not there. The old master smiles warmly and nods in agreement. Of course, he adds, Klaus had better show up. His face clears into a broad, relieved smile as he and Ursel exchange a look mutual understanding. When the training ended, a grateful voice spread over the landscape, thanking the master for his guidance. Meanwhile, at Centifolia Royal Castle, Serafina Dale makes an urgent appeal. She says that to treat her sister, she needs help finding Kylan. If Klaus can restore the holy beast, she insists, this will stop the revival of Ouroboros. She directs her words to the young girl, who listens with a worried face. The girl asks if Serafina, who until recently was ordinary, really has the power to save the world. Sitting atop a huge Saurian hill through the dense forest, Klaus expresses gratitude to Ursel, thanks him for arranging the conversation with the great saint and for obtaining the communication device from Oris. Travel, Ursel casually throws out. His family is already allied with the House of Duke Cynifolia, and this helped their negotiations move smoothly. Klaus Steyer, impressed by the news, asks why Ursel never mentioned it even once. The prize gives him confusion when Klaus asks why Ursel, the guild leader, is so deeply involved in the affairs of the Duke's family. Ursel calmly explains that the great saint is a wise man, and it is always better to be well prepared for everything. Klaus takes this to heart and steels his determination, declaring his intention. After returning the 4 holy beasts, he will ask for help in seeking care. Realizing this firm proclamation, Ursel's facial expression becomes serious, acknowledges how important Klaus's decision is. Finally reached the capital, Martino. Klaus freezes with delight, looking around at the beautiful sunlit architecture, and says there is something mystical in the city. Ursel confirms this is the very country ruled by the same one. Paves the way through streets where life is bustling, listens to the warm atmosphere and thinks that this is a city Karen will definitely like, and tells herself, someday she will definitely bring her here. Then Zamok turns his gaze to the majestic building in the distance and identifies it as Cynifolia Castle. He tells Klaus that it is time for their meeting with the great saint. In the castle corridor, their path is crossed by a frightened woman who is running away. Right behind her appears Serafina Dale, calling Selina by the hand. Before she can stop abruptly, her eyes widen. She recognizes the guests. Klaus-sama, she exclaims in shock. Klaus is equally stunned and asks why she is here and why she is talking to him about the great saint. He and Ursel were led to the grand hall, where a woman named Serafina apologized for the wait. She addressed the great Saint Mariana, who stood silently on a distant dais, then turned her attention to Klaus and said that she was meeting the demon lord for the first time. She looked further, stunned by her quiet dignity, and mentally addressed her as the great Saint Mariana. He bowed his head low. She thanked him for the opportunity to speak, and gently asked him to raise his gaze. She continued and explained that the demon lord is an exceptional being. He appears only once every few hundred years. To his surprise, she stated that the oath is taken by them before the demon lord and ordered him not to be nervous and to speak frankly. He began to thank hesitantly, still digesting her words. Then Serafina nudged him to move on to the main topic of his visit. Then her gaze fell on the creature on her shoulder. She recognized Ouroboros the demon lord and declared that his seal can be broken by the four holy beasts. He was stunned by this revelation. The idea that the demon lord would bow before a great saint seemed impossible, but he realized maybe this is his only way forward. He was gnawed by the question whether Selena had told her about this. A new voice spoke up close by. It was a small, turtle-like creature, Jinbu. He stated that the four holy beasts are awakening, so the breaking of the seal is only a matter of time. After that, Jinbu voiced their wish that the demon lord would return to the holy beasts in his true form. The scene shifts to the official hall, where Klaus stands before Serafina. He solemnly accepts her terms but adds that he has one request. The meeting converged on a desperate plea. The young maid had earlier told Selena that her younger sister suffers under the curse of Ouroboros. Given this urgency, he now voices his demand to Serafina. Before restoring the other holy beasts, he must find Kirin. He offers to provide all known information. Features, place of residence, as well as the time and date of her last sighting. He slightly bows his head and apologizes to the demon emperor for the trouble this will cause. Before he could continue, Serafina cuts him off mid-sentence. Her tone is ironclad. She declares he cannot search for Kirin until the holy beasts have regained consciousness. Klaus's eyes widen shock. Her words stun him. He stammers that there is very little time left, that his sister's life is at stake. She clarifies her position with cold finality. She cannot help him search for Kirin. This answer throws Klaus off balance. She explains fulfilling one's duty to another creature is a noble premise. The weight of this condition presses on him so much that his consciousness staggers. He asks for a moment to think. The conversation unfolds near a large building with a spire under a partly cloudy sky. Nearby, a braided servant urgently speaks to Serafina, insisting. Klaus bears a heavy responsibility and truly cherishes his sister, Selena. She slightly turns her head, and her face remains unchanged as she speaks of her own duty. She must protect the lives of hundreds of millions of people. He smiles as if he understands. He openly admits he knows he is different from her. He recalls that not long ago he was an ordinary young man and remembers a kind healer who once helped him and stopped this seal. She listens, then asks why people should trust their country to a saint. The mere fact that he carries the blood of a holy woman is not enough. She explains that the reason lies in how she was raised, with awareness and determination to protect the country. Her special training began from the very start, so she was born to fulfill this very duty. The journey to restore the clear mind to the holy beast will be filled with many hardships. He walks away, pondering the incredible weight of this burden, and then suddenly he is ordered to save the world without preparation, without resolve. Because of this, it is hard not to give up halfway. He turns sharply, but Serafina's voice stops him. She rejects her previous position. If it is for his sake, she will unquestionably save the whole world, says sharply and with sudden, fiery firmness. The scene shifts to an earlier time. Serafina speaks with the great cloaked saint Maria Folia. She confesses that there was something in Chialani that she still could not tell her. She continues, revealing the oppressive truth she had hidden. To obtain the key of the Chilean, the saint must become a human sacrifice. An image flickers in her mind. A young girl stands before a radiant, ethereal likeness of a beast. The story unfolds even further. Chilin is only a sealed form of Ouroboros. When the saint sacrifices herself, Chilin drops the key, the very instrument capable of lifting the curse of Ouroboros. Serafina then makes a stunning personal confession to the great saint. What she calls Shilin is her older sister and at the same time her mother. From the depths emerges a memory. A woman stands before the creature, strikingly resembling her. The great saint shudders in disbelief and questions the 200-year-old legend that the saint must become a sacrifice to obtain the key. She asks if this horror is true, and Serafina is struck as if by thunder. She stands stunned and cannot utter a word. When they return to the present, Serafina reveals to Klaus another layer of that tragedy. Her grieving father tried to lift the curse himself to save his wife, but in doing so he became Chelan. And now she bitterly laments that she did not manage to stop him. Her grief hardens into determination. She clenches her hands until they hurt. She reaffirms her vow, looking straight ahead without any hesitation. She will do it for Klaus. She stood before the great saint and explained that she understands Klaus's feelings. Yet she posed a critical question. What if Klaus gets the key of the Chilean and simply abandons his journey? In her mind flashed an image of her younger self. Monsters writhed around, grabbing hands. If not for Klaus, she and the whole country would be doomed, and the world would be overwhelmed by a wave of demons. The great saint, addressing her by the name Selena, asked if she still intended to believe in Klaus despite these fears. Her gaze did not waver, her resolve was clear. Meanwhile, in the noisy town of Ursel, someone tried to lift Klaus's spirits and suggested going for a walk. But Klaus, with a gloomy face, turned to the guild leader and asked what he should do. His composure cracked as soon as he hissed out his uncontrollable frustration and exclaimed that he absolutely could not restore all the sacred beasts to their proper forms. Ursel calmly explained, Karen's help means they will not be able to restore the sacred beasts, and added that the great saint cannot be trusted. Klaus clenched his fist. He was torn apart. His dream was to make Karen happy, yet she was the one suffering. He continued his thought, observing the market, and admitted, the one who has unique power is his dear sister, but such a person can hardly be considered a protector of people. Bringing the conversation to the edge, Urzel immediately addressed the young hero. He looked him straight in the eyes and asked a sharp, simple question. Did Klaus really intend to protect the world? He remains silent, trapped by the memory of Karen. She smiles and asks if he can still fight, even if she is no longer there. She reminds him, if he abandons his duty, a terrible fate awaits the world, the self-awareness he must keep within himself. His thoughts fly and sweat appears on his forehead. He acknowledges his duty and firmness, but understands. He really did not think through the message he was supposed to convey to Serafina about the will of the spirit. Ursel's voice cuts through his inner turmoil and, as if having counted everything in advance, says dryly, it should be so. He explains that he is not angry at Klaus for his lack of decisiveness. No, he is speaking with him right now to understand what he thinks and to assess the situation. Then he declares that he believes Klaus will save the world, but directly asks if he has enough determination to do so. Owners of the Gazeharden's Guild. He tells Klaus that it cannot be true, as if Karen is the only important person to him. He reminds him of the evidence of his heroism and the crowd of people he has already saved. As he speaks, images of those clowns quickly flash in the young man's mind. Ursel insists, if Klaus does not find determination within himself, he will not be able to do anything. For the sake of all those people, he must be able to do it. The words land with devastating force. Klaus's eyes widen, the sparkle of tears he did not have time to shed burst from his face, as Urzul's truth weighs heavily on him. He stood with his back to Ursel and listened attentively. The guild master gave him the last advice. From now on, he must think for himself. Then Ursel assured that as soon as he decides on the topic of conversation, she will arrange a meeting with the great shrine on his behalf. The conversation ended, and Klaus found himself before Serafina Dale, the second saint. She looked at him intently, commanding him to be mindful of his own weakness, and he shuddered but did not break. He acknowledged her words with a firm yes. In the morning, when he finally decided on the plan, Klaus left the inn together with Karen. Outside, Ursel stood with folded arms and a questioning tone, watching closely to see if the decision had already been made. Klaus nodded confidently, his face frozen in determination. After his decision, he, together with Ursel, accompanied Serafina and the great Saint Mary Folia through the city streets. When they approached the magnificent cathedral, Serafina turned to them again and sincerely thanked them for their time. In the sacred halls of the cathedral, the great saint addressed Serafina directly. She stated that she had received a response from Ursula, and her tone hinted at a complicated outcome. Serafina remained listening with a worried expression. While the saints were being born, Klaus gathered his courage, not taking his eyes off ahead. He quietly but firmly gave the order to move forward and was ready for what lay ahead. Resolve faced an unexpected turn. The great saint sincerely apologized, and at her words Serafina's eyes sharply widened in shock, while Ursula froze in complete disbelief. She could not understand the apology, so she questioned the great saint about it. Serafina recalled how she once said something sharp herself and aloud wondered why Maria Folia had to apologize, assuming it might be related to Klaus. The explanation of his apologies became clear as soon as Klaus knelt in prayerful humility before the great saint. He said, "Those who have great power also bear great responsibility, for they have inherited the might of a demonic lord." He declared that if he fails to awaken the holy beast, the end will come to the world itself. And he took this burden upon himself to Seraphine's surprise. He continued his solemn oath without averting his gaze. When he declared his intention to save the great saint at any cost, a vision of Karen in chains flashed through his mind. Even if it meant being bound to this fate, Serafina watched, her face frozen with a mixture of confusion and anxiety. He walked beside his sister, and his thoughts formed a clear goal. He needed neither wealth nor fame. The only thing that truly mattered was not to become the person who would entrust the fate of the world to his sister. For him, this was a simple, undeniable truth. Then he directly addressed the great saint, and his voice sounded firm, full of conviction. He admitted that he should have immediately informed about his decision to awaken the holy beast. The great saint listened silently, and nothing was readable on her face. He continued further, explaining that his sister had always been his main priority and that would never change. Maria Folia calmly confirmed his words, but a barely noticeable uncertainty still trembled in her voice. The thought shifted again to the promise made under the starry sky. He then told the younger Karen about his dream of becoming a traveler, joining Ursel's guild, exploring the world and dining in many places. But he already knew such dreams come true only when they are truly happy. Moving to the present, he revealed his feelings. He said that at first Karen was his motivation, but later he met many others who truly cared about him, people for whom he now felt a deep need to protect. His gaze fell on the great saints, and hope flashed in his eyes. He officially asked her for help, asked if she would agree to cooperate with him so that together they could save the world. He smiled and crossed his arms with new confidence. He promised to give his all and also said he would be grateful for any information she could provide about Kieran. A sincere request and unwavering determination left the great saint deeply moved. Her eyes shone with overwhelming feelings. She looked at him and in his eyes saw not just a plea, but a whole universe of determination, blazing and bearing the weight of all the lives he sought to protect. His consciousness was filled with the faces and voices of those he had sworn to save. He heard Selina's desperate plea to save their lives, the support of the old master to continue building his communication devices to talk with family, and the young man's vow to become stronger. Above him hung the shared hope of all, the responsibility he felt as his duty to carry to bring happiness to them all. Deep in his conviction, a single tear made its way down Maria Foley's cheek. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, and her voice sounded full of reverence. She acknowledged his intention and said that he truly intended to save everyone. When the decision was made, she gestured for them to follow her deeper into the chamber, addressing Klaus and hardening her soul. As they moved further, she began to explain her reasoning. She admitted, relying only on what he himself reported, demanding that he be taken hostage would be reckless. She had to make a difficult decision. He paused for self-reflection and admitted, taking people as bargaining chips is the act of an immature demon lord, and now he understood that. A quiet chuckle escaped her lips, and with a gentle smile while Selina watched she reassured him, saying that he truly is a wonderful demon lord. When a new alliance is formed, Ursel hands Klaus a communication device with a confident wink, explaining that he heard from Morris about their efforts to help manufacture these devices for the citizens. Meanwhile, Maria Folia contemplates the consequences of their pact, a restrained, resolute smile on her face as she realizes this agreement will make them all stronger at the same time. Then she reaches out her hand to Klaus, her face shining, her gaze firm. She calls him to join and says that together they will save the world. He takes her hand without hesitation, sealing their agreement. Beside Ursel and Selina look at the two their faces clearly show approval of the newly formed alliance. Their path leads to a towering structure, a place connected with the very same black magic they seek to understand. Maria Folia leads the group to huge, intricately carved doors, announces that this is the way forward, and then turns and addresses someone among them personally. She places her hand on the surface of the doors and to the stunned Klaus explains they can only be opened by the power of the demon lord. The request must be clear, she needs his magic. He stands before the large doors. They open with a deep, rolling groan, showing the way forward. Maria Folio waits immediately behind him, a silent observer. His eyes widen as he inhales the space of the grand throne hall, bathed in ghostly light. Far at the end, the adorned throne stands empty but presses with its presence. The voice of Maria Folia echoes behind. This is the chamber where successive demon lords resign their powers. A wave of recognition pierces him. He feels like he has been here before. His gaze falls on the glowing magic circle on the floor, a pattern exactly the same as his, and he aloud wonders why it is here. Looking at the circle, he feels a burst of fragmented images exploding in his head. A smiling woman, monstrous beasts, joyful children, and fragments of his own past all merging into a chaotic storm in his mind. He gasps back, clutching his head because the mental blow overwhelms him completely. Inside he insists he doesn't know these things, yet despite this, a conflicting sense of familiarity floods his consciousness, and suddenly horrified he realizes these memories are not his. While he struggles with foreign thoughts, Maria Folia calmly asks if memories of the first demon lord have returned to him. This question hits Klaus so hard that it knocks the ground from under his feet, and he stares in shocked stupor at the hint as if he is the reincarnation of the demon lord. She acknowledges what a colossal confusion he probably has in his head right now, and notes that the chaos is also caused by an incredible amount of information. Seeing his despair, she suggests he rest in this room for a while to think everything over. Still stunned by the revelation, Klaus can only nod quietly and uncertainly, giving his consent. He stood in the middle of the huge hall, and as soon as a quiet knock sounded and a ball of smoke burst out, the colossal figure of the sacred beast Jinbu curled up before him. Now this increasingly less creature crept up when he sat down and asked if he was okay. Klaus, still shaken by the wave of memories, admitted that the information received was too much to digest all at once. He began piecing together the details, aloud realizing this is why his magic was so different from others. It required a magic circle. Still confused, he turned to Jinbu and asked what exactly that meant. Jinbu began explaining the fundamental principles of their world. As clarified, both humans and beasts are born with a source of magic mana, which is inherently within them. All that remains is to learn how to draw power from within. But his method was completely different. He raised the luminous magic circle and realized it is designed to absorb the surrounding mana of the world itself, transforming it into its own power, a technique called mana conversion. It is this variabilitized power to manipulate the magic circle and transform the world's mana that was the defining feature of the demon lord. This unique method was the secret of his incredible strength. Jimba explained, Since he drew from an external source, he could use powerful healing magic and never exhaust his own reserves. A vision flashed before his Aishi's former self, realizing that his immense but different magical ability was the very reason for his situation. The last part was completed. He looked at the creature, a gentle smile spread across his face as he apologized for his forgetfulness. Finally remembered, I remember you, Jinbu, he said. The passing creature Jinbu looked at him with gentle eyes, apologizing for making him forget. She addressed Klaus simply as master. Klaus, choked with emotions, rushed forward and tightly embraced his old friend. He thanked Jinbu for waiting for him all this time. Jin Baojin asked his master and requested to touch the jewel embedded in his forehead. He explained that it was worth touching the jewel and his master's memories would return even clearer. Klaus listened, and with each phrase his face grew more serious, for he already felt how great the price of this moment was. As soon as his fingers touched, a powerful flash memory burst through him, a memory of the first demon lord Cecil. Before his eyes flashed a vision. A man and a woman leaving behind two small children crying bitterly. In her memories, one woman explained to the younger Cecil, his parents set out on the road precisely because he and his brothers and sisters were too important to them. She warned, if everything remains as it is, they will not be able to survive. The truth settled in his head. His parents left to protect the people they loved above all else. Following their example, he's the first demon lord tree to protect the whole world with. With this renewed purpose that strengthened his resolve, Klaus returned to the present time. His hand clenched into a firm fist. From afar came Ursula's voice, confident, as if he knew Klaus was capable of doing whatever was necessary. Consciousness cleared, he turns to the companion, thank you, Jinbu. His voice sounds confident, as if a new determination has appeared in him. Let's return to the other sacred beasts. The animal responds with unconditional loyalty, and its voice is expressed by its very readiness. Of course, my lord. Among other things, not far from the tall clock tower, Seraphina excitedly declares her intention to join the journey. Her maid worries and warns that it is dangerous, but Seraphina brushes it off, smiling radiantly and saying she is confident in her abilities. Her statement meets resistance. Ursula insists she must follow his orders, and Klaus, looking irritated, dryly tells her not to refuse. In response, Seraphina shows a round or oval magical device. She says it is a means of teleportation. If something happens to them, they can use it to return to the castle. And with deep gratitude, she says she has been entrusted with such a valuable thing. When everything was settled, Ursula shows the final destination. Kirin was last seen in the kingdom of Hudent. There the sacred beast Akko, a two-tailed black predator, was sealed by guardians from the Moslin family. While he speaks, an image of a fierce black two-tailed cat appears before them. Klaus immediately agrees they will head there. As they are preparing to leave, Seraphina's maid pulls her aside. Her face is worried. She whispers, asking if everything is really all right, and separately names Kira. Seraphina's manner changes. With a slightly sly, confident smile, she orders the maid never to mention this in front of Klaus. She admits she just needs to repay a debt she owes. When Klaus and Ursula were ready to set out, a great saint, Maria Folia, appeared before them. In her ceremonial white attire and veil, she spoke a farewell blessing, wishing that the divine protection of Kirin would be upon them all. On the outskirts of the country Huey Dent, an official addresses the crowd and announces, the Saint of Centifolia has declared war on the Demon Lord. But he adds a chilling detail: their own holy beast, the white tiger, has already awakened and knows of their presence. He continues delivering a passionate speech, insisting that the white tiger is the sacred animal of their nation and that they must defeat it to protect their homeland. In the crowd, the braided swordswoman Karen stands silently, clenching her fists, her face showing stern determination. The official's eyes narrow as he internally admits he asked for a guardian to be assigned to the seal. But he suspects that the one he turned to has already realized the full seriousness of the situation. Thoughts Ursula's, he stands alone, seen from behind, bow on his back and quiver on his shoulder. The official's assessment is grim. The guardians of Huey Dent are powerless in this matter. Meanwhile, far from here, Klaus and Seraphina travel through the forest riding a colossal Jinbu. Seraphina looks around with admiration, and the smaller lizard companion, also a Jinbu, comments on how amazingly smooth the ride is. He turns to Seraphina with a bright smile and asks what kind of country Huey Dent is. He admits he is looking forward to meeting the white tiger. They continue. The small Yanbu explains that 90 of Huey Dent's territory is forest, so the area has a sacred, naturally rich atmosphere. Klaus aloud wonders if Karen would like to come with him, and nearby the maid girl blushes and exclaims that she would gladly. The small Yanbu notes her words sounded very sincere. The servant's gaze caught on his sincere reaction, and Klaus turns to Ursula, who has joined their company. He asks directly, "Are you worried about Karen?" He listens while Ursula orders to contact the guild through their communication device as soon as they settle in Huey Dent. Klaus thanks, and Ursula shrugs indifferently. After finishing the conversation, the company continues the journey on foot. Boots firmly stomp the forest path. Klaus dives deeper and looks in awe at the vast scale of the forest. He examines the local animals and sees that Huey Dent is a nation that truly values coexistence with nature. Serafina unfolds his thought and explains, to protect this natural balance, the nation uses master archers hunters. Urzel adds that people reduce logging to receive the forest's blessing, which in turn changes how travelers should act. Serafina sees a true miracle in this, and Klaus, deeply impressed, understands that the nation is truly under the forest's protection. Consciousness breaks off as the faces of the entire group change to fear. Ursel shouts a warning about a pure white barrier, and at that moment, a flock of shining arrows emerges from the air, flying straight at them. Serafina shudders with shock, and Klaus doubtfully asks why there is suddenly such aggression. He aloud asks if this means that the hunters are their enemies, trying to understand the attack as if it could be nothing but a misunderstanding. Ursel quickly dismissed his assumption, urging it on and ordering to use force. When Klaus looked back in confusion, Ursel clarified which abilities he meant: Regenerate, Limit Break, and Mystic Awakening. And after them, arrows one after another hung in the air as if frozen. He rushed into battle while his comrades watched. Serafina, frowning with worry, asked Ursula. Klaus's abilities were limited to healing magic for living beings. She did not understand how he would cope with a hail of arrows at all. But Ursula had no doubt. He simply said that Klaus would find a way. While he flew through the air, he gathered himself into focus, unfolded sensation, and extended awareness to feel how mana flows around. His search accurately pointed to the source, an exceptionally skilled hunter standing exactly 1 kilometer away. Realizing that evading such a furious barrage of shots was impossible, he prepared a countermeasure. A radiant sigil flared in his palm, forming a circle. He sharply threw his hands forward, casting the spell Explode. 2 magical circles appeared in the path of the arrows and exploded, tearing the projectiles apart in a series of fiery bursts before they could reach their targets. Despite his efforts, the arrows continued to converge closer and closer, and this had become an urgent threat. Below, Ursel explained to the stunned Serafina that Klaus had sparked static electricity in the air to cause the explosions. Serafina could only marvel. Such a trick was performed using healing magic. In response to the relentless assault, a new power burst forth. Giant roots tore from the battle floor, twisting and growing at an unnatural speed under the influence of the spell of infinite growth. The giant roots fused into a living shield, intercepting the last arrows. One of the tendrils gently wrapped around Klaus, lifting him higher while he watched in confusion and surprise. But the sudden defense caught the distant archer off guard. He was caught in the very nets of the forest he intended to control. Magical roots wrapped around his legs and arms, and he froze, tilting his head in shocked disbelief. They wondered what kind of person Ursel had brought as an ally. He had never before seen such powerful and unusual magic. Ursel meets the newly arrived Shuya with a barely smiling, all-knowing look and says, yes, they really do know each other. He teases Shuya for always trying to win by some strange methods. Nearby, Klaus, with Uroboros on his shoulder, watches in amazement. This is the attacker they had long awaited. The Guardian, the reliable watchman of the Demon Lord. The fierce crossbowman, now subdued, undergoes interrogation by Ursel. She asks if he was informed in advance that guards would arrive in the western lands without any stated reason. The young man, drenched in sweat, cannot gather himself to answer. In response, he suddenly throws himself to the ground in a deep, ringing bow and shouts a desperate apology. Klaus, standing nearby, flinches at the unexpected and overly dramatic display of sincere repentance. Ursel quietly orders him to pull himself together, assuring that no one is blaming him. He commands the shooter to listen to their side and then deliver his own verdict. Serafina watches this conversation silently. Klaus looks at everything, a thoughtful expression on his face. He says that despite the circumstances, Shia is incredibly strong and that he is happy. From now on, they will fight together. Hearing these words, the shooter sharply raises his gaze, eyes wide open with emotion. Silently, he notes the sad expression on his interlocutor's face. The struck shooter freezes in dizzying silence while Klaus leans in and firmly shakes his hand, a bright, friendly smile on his face. He again emphasizes how glad he is that they will be allies. The archer, full of excitement, kneels on one knee and, as is proper, introduces himself, guard Shia Moslin, and solemnly pledges his body and soul to Klaus. This confuses Klaus. Ursel, amused, advises, let Shia just call him Klaus and speak normally, but Klaus immediately interrupts. That is an order. He is somewhat drawn in by Shia's eager agreement, but he confirms that the arrangement suits him. Shia, almost glowing with excitement, solemnly declares that it is a great honor for him to receive an order from the Demon Lord while he watches. Ursel notes how quickly the situation has changed. While they make their way through the forest together, Ursel says the rumors about the arrival of the Demon Lord have probably already spread throughout the country, so Klaus should avoid cities for now. Chair agrees and, snorting in surprise, admits he doesn't understand how anyone could have arrived so quickly and adds that he himself did not sense their appearance. Their path is stopped by a spectacle. Nearby on a hill rises a large mad creature in silhouette, maw and growling. Klaus anxiously asks if the white tiger has already caused a massacre. Shia confirms. It has completely lost its mind, and it is only a matter of time before it is sealed in a magical barrier. Behind them, Seraphina's face is gloomy. She urges on, saying the mad beast is not the main problem. Driving the tiger onto the hill, they find the truth. The white tiger does not rage wildly, it is bound with thick ropes and pierced by numerous arrows. A figure in a cloak stands over the tortured animal, like part of a cruel ritual of taming. Klaus freezes in horror and cannot believe what he sees. Seraphina explains the desperate state of affairs. The beast is the sacred guardian of this territory, and if it dies, the land itself will begin to wither. She clarifies. The real problem is not the beast, but stopping the nobles who are behind its torture. Hearing this, Urzel's hand clenches into a tight fist. He thinks that his warning words were ignored in the inaction, which he fully blames on his own incapacity. He turns to Klaus with a look full of remorse and explains. A barrier has already been built in the forest that they cannot overcome or remove. He apologizes and says that if he had acted earlier, this could have been avoided, but Shia tries to calm Klaus, telling him not to blame himself. Urzel turns to the crossbowman Shia Moslin. His face is pleading. He asks if Shia will save their white tiger, begging, first restore the beast's sanity. Before Shia can respond, Klaus steps forward with a confident smile. Ouroboros is perched on his shoulder. He assures that this is exactly why they came here. With their objectives defined, the group makes their way through the central street Huey Des. While they walk, Urzel explains. To break the barrier, a magical tool from the guild is needed. The conversation is interrupted when a stern-looking official representative appears in their path, blocking the way. The official looks down maliciously, while Shia indignantly insists that the barrier is not some simple magical thing. He declares that the Ahan Duchy will handle the white tiger and demands to leave it to them. His composure cracks as soon as he begins to interrogate what someone can do without companions. A drop of sweat appears on his temple as he realizes he could call for reinforcements from his family. Suddenly, the official grabs Shuya by the collar. He sends the archer away, calling him an incompetent guard, and reveals, since Shuya is useless, the demon lord himself has already offered to tame the beast instead of him. Klaus freezes and the official's words echo in his head. He understands. They are talking about him and his healing magic. When they turn and walk away, he notices a familiar bitter parallel between Shia's situation and his own past. He had noted above Great Beast and listened as Ouroboros commented on the time needed to complete the application for the magical tool. Yet his thoughts were still about Archer. He had no idea why such a strong person as Shuya acts in this way. Shurya, meanwhile, he saw himself as no more than an incompetent guardian. He explained, he was simply chosen within his clan for this role when he was only 16. He remembered how he was struck by the beautiful forest and felt deep pride at the thought of becoming a protector for such a country. But his reverie was broken by a contemptuous voice. His attempts at innovation were met with ridicule. Other adventurers warned him not to use magic. They said it was dangerous. He tried to explain that his specialization was fire magic, so he was trying to combine it with archery. The memory continued. He was surrounded by guild colleagues, even the guild master Urzel himself, yet he was still not trusted. As a guardian, he felt completely isolated. The memory faded, and he stood with his back against the very people he was supposed to protect, unrecognized, without any acknowledgement. Watching from afar, Klaus noticeably relaxed his gaze. Understanding appeared on his face. He approached the archer and explained his discovery. He told Shuya that his fighting style fits the rhythm harmoniously, like the forest itself, but others are wary because they cannot feel this quality. Klaus concluded. Now he understands why Shuya lacks confidence. Raising his gaze and smiling brightly, he told Shia that everything was fine. He promised him that he would definitely find friends. The unexpected kindness disarmed the shooter. His eyes filled with tears, and he could not utter a word. He tells Shui that everything that happened in the past no longer matters. Seraphina eagerly intervenes and pushes Shui. Use this fight so everyone can see how incredible you are. The speech hits straight to the heart of the young archer. With a composed, firm smile and tears already filling his eyes, Shia Agrish understands that it is here his true worth as a guardian will be tested. While he secretly gathers his courage, the lizard companion Jin Bu announces that they seem to be late. He says the nobles they met earlier have already arrived at the place. His warning covers the moment Shuya and Seraphina catch what lies ahead. Far away, heavy, shock-stricken breathing, Klaus and Ursula stand atop the colossal sacred beast Jinbu, watching the entire scene unfold. Before they can react, the majestic white tiger is caught in a trap. Roaring in pain, it thrashes, beating against the heavy chains anchored to the ground. Nobly surround the beast, tightening the bonds. Klaus is horrified to the point of losing his mind. There is only one urgent thought in his head. Save the white tiger. Under the crowd of hunters, a giant white tiger roars an agonized sacred guardian, bound by heavy chains. Shia Moslin watches this with anxiety. The barrier is broken and they need help. The audience is stunned, and Klaus strides forward with determination, placing his hand on his heart and boldly declaring that he is a demon lord and from now on takes command of the situation. In the background, Commander Fowl snorts and calls him a fool. Turns to Fowl and apologizes for his sudden appearance. Fowl, impatient, simply orders the self-proclaimed demon lord to quickly finish this and continue. The declaration stuns the viewers. Shia freezes with wide-open eyes disbelief, and Commander Fowl's face twists into a mask of pure shock and outrage. Shock quickly fades, replaced by rage, dirty sneers, an angry voice, and he asks how they even hope the white tiger will listen now. After that, he raises a whip-like rod and threatens to beat the beast into submission himself. She can hit shouts for him to wait. He explains haltingly, if the situation unfolds, the hunters have no way to defend themselves in such an open area. The dispute intensifies and Serafina steps forward. The round artifact in her hand begins to glow softly, and she calmly intervenes, asking to wait, claiming that she was the first to find this prey. The artifact flashes, instantly scattering a shimmering magical barrier that envelops the white tiger in chains. The sudden burst of power shocks the hunters. They notice that the beast's roar sounds even louder now from inside the enclosure. She stands firm. Her magic unfolds into a double barrier, one of mist and the other of sacred energy, to restrain the white tiger. Klaus turns to his small companion Jinbu and orders him to work together with Serafina to protect the hunters. Jinbu pays proper attention to the orders. The sudden appearance of the magical shield causes the hunters to freeze, and they suddenly find themselves saved. Shiamoe's lens hangs in confusion, while Serafina panics and orders everyone to flee into the forest. He demands to know who she is. Despite his question, she makes a shocking statement and proclaims herself an ally of the demon lord. With a stern face, she presses them again, flee and hurry. In the middle of the barrier, the white tiger lets out a fierce roar. Its power wildly presses against the magical chains. The beast rips and growls madly. Shia turns to Klaus and smiles confidently, soothingly saying that his help is appreciated and that everything is fine. Nearby, other hunters whisper, pondering what exactly is happening. Then he addresses his comrades, announcing, since the demon lord has already arrived, they can relax. He orders them to move toward the forest and, relying on what is happening now, decides to lead his people to safety. As his people retreat, Shia draws his huge saber. It crackles with energy. He declares that he will personally take on the beast's formidable power, preparing to absorb the blow while Klaus watches the stunts being set up. Suddenly, a tree nearby explodes with cracks. A young woman falls to the ground, writhing and crying out in despair from horror. The noise startles the hunters who were retreating, and inside Shia, everything breaks. He sharply jerks his head and anxiously calls Klaus and the others. When the invisible attack struck from above, the man in the dark cloak reacted instantly, sharply thrusting his hand forward. A complex magical sigil flared, releasing a wave of protective energy as soon as he pronounced the spell's name. Extreme flame blood. The explosion subsides and the fleeing woman remains unharmed but shaken. The cloaked man asks if she is okay. After a pause, she confirms and he orders her to hide quickly in the forest. When she looks back, her eyes widen in shock. A moment of recognition flashes across her face as soon as she sees his blue robe. Then he switched to the other hunters who were caught in the attack. One man groaned in pain while his comrade tried to keep him on his feet. The capped rider cast another spell. A gentle, restorative light enveloped them. Perfect healing. Instantly healed all wounds. A sharp demonstration of powerful magic subdued the great white tiger. The beast, which had been raging moments ago, froze. Its gaze fixed on the scene, and the dark crystal embedded in its forehead flashed with a gleam. The threat to the hunters was averted in time, and now in the small clearing the chaplain and the archer Shia finally stood face to face. Finally met, said the chaplain in an even tone. You redeemed the archer from further hesitation and instead turned his gaze to the sacred guardian. The tiger let out a low, warning growl, baring its fangs. Unafraid, the young man spoke directly to the beast. White tiger, I will help you now. Before Shia could grasp the intention, Kepman summoned another power, infinite growth. Right beneath the archer's feet, the ground flared up. Thick, crooked vines tore through the turf, soaring upward, twisting in the air and entwining him. The vines rapidly closed into a dense wooden cage, completely immobilizing the stunned archer. Having secured his target, the man in the cloak calmly stood on the back of the now obedient white tiger and looked down at his captured opponents. He stood before the tamed tiger and the trapped archer, a satisfied smile on his face. Good, he thought, that everyone gathered to see this memorable result. His moment of pleasure was shattered by the mad scream of the man in the fur collar. He roared for them not to interfere. He barely managed to shout when an arrow pierced the air and flew towards the tiger. Zoya fired the projectile, but it was still bound by magical vines. The archer had already made the Shathai's face full of stern determination. Klaus watched as his eyes widened in shock, as if refusing to believe this clear act. Arrow crashed into the target, a heavy, dull thud. When the arrow struck the crystal imprisoned in the forehead of the white tiger, a painful roar burst from it. The animal's consciousness began to fade. The chief in the fur collar froze, staring in shock at the catastrophic defeat. Before anyone could react, a gigantic dark figure crashed down from above, striking the stunned tiger with incredible force and slamming it to the ground with a thunderous sound. The onlookers gasped. The beast was felled with a single blow. But he, however, looked at the screen with complete delight. A broad smile stretched across his face, and he aloud marveled at the power of the Mage Emperor so devastating that it took one's breath away. His reaction left the crowd in complete confusion. They whispered that the White Tiger had already been defeated and that Ursel also came out for this training. Jinbu proudly declared that this was the power of his master. But the fluffy-collared official vented his rage on the bound Shuya, hissing that this was his achievement to present himself like that. He lamented, if Shuya had just caught the tiger, they would have gained huge wealth and fame. He grabs the young archer Shuya and demands an explanation for why they brought the magical emperor. With an expression of complete distrust, the official representative asks if the hunters now work as one team. Calmly explains, since the hunters lack the means to protect themselves, they must cover each other. Fighting while covering their comrades, he insists, is the law of this country. The official immediately rejects this, his face contorts with contempt. He accuses Shuya of ordering the hunters to rush into danger just to satisfy their own selfish desires. He grits his teeth and declares that the entire incident will be reported to the guild. His superior freezes in silence for a moment, then anger explodes. He asks how someone can be so incompetent while Shuya dares to speak to him in such a tone. His sharp speech is cut off when a woman archer steps forward and shouts at him. She reminds them that they were ordered to protect the country and asks if he really believes they were merely acting in their own interests. She accuses him of lying. Stunned by the open disobedience, the official trembles. At that moment, Klaus appears beside him, calmly says he is only repeating what Shuya told him. A radiant magical circle flares at his feet and an explosive trap is triggered. He looks down at the frightened man and declares that he will not allow him to interfere with the tiger hunt. Klaus voices his intention to take necessary measures as he sees fit, and the official begins stammering in a trembling voice, uttering the name Magic Emperor out of fear. After the official is neutralized, Shuya turns to Klaus and thanks him for dealing with the foolish duke and clearing the way so they could focus on the white tiger which lies weakened on a bed in the forest. Laos approaches the gigantic creature and places his hand on its strike, blocking it back with his tail. A radiant magical sigil flares under his palm, and he begins casting a powerful healing spell, Perfect Heal. While the spell gains strength, a faceted gemstone materializes on the tiger's forehead. A flash in its eyes abruptly open, the forced release of hidden magical power is finally complete. The white tiger is now fully alert, the new hall glowed brightly. Klaus watches calmly, acknowledging the creature's return to consciousness. To his surprise, the tiger spoke, its voice echoed with ancient power. It called him by his full name, Klaus Finley, and declared that from now on he is its master for this lifetime. When the bond is sealed, Klaus moves forward and embraces the great beast, apologizing for being late. The tiger gently presses against him, accepting the apology. The white tiger explains to Klaus that he has a stubborn character. Then it shifts its gaze to the lizard brother nearby, Jin Bu, and notes, for an acquaintance, he has too sharp a mouth. It continues, saying that everyone sees Klaus is the master here and offers to give him a ride. But Jin Bu orders to disperse. Jin Bu replies that the tiger must allow everyone to travel because they are all servants of the same master. He stretched out his hand and his palms sank into the whiteness of the cloud, into the dense, soft fur of the white tiger. The beast stood proudly and its new gemstone sparkled brightly, so it addressed its new master with a question. Isn't his coat the most luxurious? A smile spread across his face as he gently stroked the creature's head. The tiger declared that only Klaus is allowed to touch it, and he found this amusingly similar to how Karen's sister behaved with jealousy. With a sharp movement, he leapt onto the back of the massive creature. All right, he shouted to the others watching from the edge of the clearing. Let's return to the city and report. On the central street of Huey Dent, Klaus Pat, the huge white tiger, informs the creature that they have arrived. His immediate plan is to report to the local guild. The bustling street is crowded with people. He marvels at the size of the crowd. Nearby, Shia Moslin loudly divined, inquiring whether this commotion was because of him, the vessel of the demonic lord. The answer comes with the sudden appearance of a man with smoothly slicked-back blonde hair, who addresses him, Your Highness Alfred. Klaus freezes. It dawns on him that he is standing face to face with the prince of this country. Alfred gestures to Shia to relax, then turns to Klaus. He asks him to tell everyone that in this official place they should all abandon such strict formality. Alfred addresses Klaus directly and gently explains that since he is a person like everyone else in this country, he should be treated accordingly. Then he notes the pleasant, refreshing atmosphere of the state and asks if Klaus feels it too. Explains his appearance. He heard that the seal on the sacred white tiger is in danger, so he is already heading to check everything. He looks at the calm beast next to Klaus and smiles. The tiger has already returned to normal. Prince admits somewhat embarrassedly that he intended to track a certain daughter, but was distracted and gives sincere thanks. Unable to hold back, Klaus insists he just wants to be treated like any other citizen. Alfred laughs, agreeing to reconsider his approach. His face changes to sincerely serious. He insists Klaus saved the country, and since that is so, he has the right to at least minimal gratitude. Embarrassed by the royal gratitude, he falters and whispers a simple, embarrassed reply. Yes, thank you. Accepting the invitation to the castle, Klaus announces that he has something to report. He gestures towards the bound, sweat-drenched man nearby. This is Duckhaken. Prince Alfred's face hardens as Klaus explains that the Duke used hunters for his own selfish ambitions, trying to subdue the white tigress and cause unnecessary pain to the sacred creature. He reveals Dukahan tried to tame the white tigress instead of Shui, and this news makes the Duke's face contort with panic. Suddenly, through the tension, the voice of a young woman breaks through. She steps forward, addresses the Duke as her father, and without a shadow of doubt declares that he used the hunters for his own purposes. She confronts him directly and asks him not to make up excuses for Shuya, then cuts in with a question. Did he really understand how useless Shuya was? The Duke is drenched in sweat, unable to utter a single word. Her appearance triggers a memory in Clawsend. He realizes that this is the same princess he saved earlier. Nearby, Shia explains, she is a good person who helped the hunters he was forced to abandon. The princess shifts her confident gaze to the group and declares, I will vouch for him. She clarifies Shia's actions did not match what the public believed. Embarrassed by the praise, Shia stammers and insists that he was just trying to protect everyone. His reaction makes Alfred take a step forward. He praises the work done and forgives any old disrespect. Alfred declares that he is a great guard, leaving Shia stunned and blushing. Then he shifts his gaze to Duke Akin and announces the sentence. The Duke is to be stripped of his title and exiled to his domain, with a strict warning, never to set foot beyond its borders again. When the disgraced Duke is led away, the rest celebrate the just verdict. The princess happily takes Shia by the arm, and Alfred pats him on the back. Relief spreads throughout the company. After pausing to gather his thoughts, Alfred says, they have already seen enough unpleasantness for today. He orders them to find shelter and rest, promising a worthy reward later. Klaus gratefully accepts the offer. However, their animal companions have much more festive plans. White Tiger and Lizard excitedly suggest holding a festive banquet that very night. Shia immediately agrees, noting that this is exactly the holiday for the return of the White Tigress to the capital of the Demon Lord. The princess returns to Klaus and nudges him, relax and wait for the festivities. Their plans are cut short by the sudden arrival of Ursel. She descends from above, addressing Klaus as Demon Lord. She tells him to stop what he is doing now because it does not suit him. After that, she waves, calling Klaus and Shulia to follow her in the direction toward. Klaus and Shia find themselves in a huge, luxurious ballroom shimmering under the light of a massive chandelier. Klaus's eyes are wide open. He is breathless from the sheer scale and luxury of this gathering. He stammers and says that this is his first time at such a party and he feels completely out of place here. Shea, looking much calmer, only remarks, for him, it's just been a long time. Their attention is fixed on the young woman descending the stairs. Klaus immediately recognizes her Princess Milia and involuntarily marvels at how different and how beautiful she is in her ceremonial dress. She shines and joyfully calls out loudly to her older brother, look at me. Klaus feels awkward from her light, and only one thought spins in his head. If Karen were in such a dress, she would definitely look just as wonderful. His delirium tears Shuya accurately guessing what he thought about Karen. Trustingly smiling, Shuya raises a small rectangular communication device, and Klaus suddenly freezes in surprise. He explains that the same device was delivered to Karen's location and advises Klaus to try contacting her later. Grateful, Klaus accepts the device, sincerely thanking from the bottom of his heart. Silence breaks as suddenly a crowd of nobles closes in around Klaus. They shower him with titles Clausen nephew, and even Demon Lordzima, and Klaus immediately loses his head in panic. The nobles press even closer and bombard him with questions. Rumors and legends weave them. One asks if it is true that he brought Jinbu back in a packing sack, and another if it is true that he really defeated King Minotaur all alone. Klaus, drenched in sweat and with eyes wide from fear, is trapped by his own fame. He staggered from the insane attention, everything blurred before his eyes until the nobles pressed from all sides. Behind, Shia and Ursel only urged him on. Endure it, as if one of the guests had run over him and he even decided he was the guild master. His thoughts raced like a whirlwind, panic overwhelmed him from the sheer number of people. He silently begs Selena for help and has no idea where she might be. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him away from the throne. It was Princess Mila. She asked if he was okay because it was clear he did not like being the center of attention at all. Meanwhile, in the quiet courtyard of Huey Dent Castle, Selena stood alone. Speaking into the communication device, she asked the person on the other side if she could really leave the party. The voice belonged to Karen Finley. She sharply sat up in bed and beamed with joy. She admitted that she had long dreamed of talking to Selena, and Selena responded just as warmly. Leading Selena along the paths of the moonlit rose garden, she explained that Klaus had given her this device and now they could talk that evening. After that, she said she had something to talk about. Heron's expression shifted, a blush rose on her cheeks as she looked at her device. She immediately got to the point and asked directly, Selena, you like my brother, don't you? The blunt question instantly plunged Selena into complete silence. Her face flushed with heat as her thoughts caught a moment of their first meeting, then she burst into tears and hugged her tightly. She apologizes for surprising Karen so much and explains, her feelings are somewhat different from romantic love. She holds a small pendant in her hand and clarifies that what she feels is closer to reverence. Continuing to speak into the communication device, she directly states that Klaus is very important to her. Karen remains completely embarrassed. Her cheeks flush, and she, choking on her words, begins to babble in response. She tries to grasp this while sitting on the bed and notes. Klaus is her important older brother, but they are not related by blood. Selena's consciousness breaks into a memory, a smiling class always nearby. She reflects on what a wonderful thing love grown over years must be. Returning to the conversation, she says to Karen with a radiant smile that she incredibly enjoys listening to such stories, and eagerly asks to hear more, causing Karen to blush deeply from embarrassment. Her face warms as she thinks about how kind Klaus has become, and tells Karen that she is incredibly happy to hear that. It seems to cement the decision for Karen. She lifts her gaze with new determination. She tells Alina that she wants both Alina and Klaus to be happy. Mutual understanding between them strengthens. Together, they proclaim a common goal. They will definitely break the Ouroboros curse. Karen nods decisively in response without hesitation. She stopped abruptly, her eyes wide with surprise. A few steps further in the spacious arch hallway stood Klaus and a young woman she recognized as Princess Melia. Princess Melia led him to a series of doors, explaining that it was the royal family's private resting room while she opened one of them. He stepped over the threshold, and his gaze immediately caught on a luxurious canopy bed. Could this chamber be no worse than the demon lord's own quarters? Sitting on a soft sofa opposite the princess, who had changed into an elegant dress, he suddenly became confused. She assured him that now they could talk as much as they wanted, but he was both grateful and embarrassed. He did not understand how everyone knew about him and where to even begin explaining. Princess Milia smiled and clarified that she received her information from Ursel and Alfred. She admitted, just having met Klaus herself, she was so impressed that she immediately understood the truth in their words. Then she explained, as part of her training to get to know her country, her father ordered her to live and act like a hunter. It was in this guise that she heard rumors about the guardian beast, so she believed them and asked Shia to join the squad's evening party led by Duke Ahan. Her face became gloomy as soon as she remembered the archer. If only she had tried to understand him earlier, she sighed to herself. Maybe she could have stopped him. Turning her gaze back to Klaus, she gave a sincere smile. She thanked him, acknowledging everyone was safe only because he and his companions arrived exactly when needed. She continues. She says she was completely overwhelmed by his healing magic, his character, and how he values his companions. Then she boldly declares that she confirmed he is the only one who can become her partner. Klaus shudders in shock and his mind buzzes with this word partner. Leaning closer and smiling confidently, blushing, she asks him to accept her. He can only freeze in place, sweating and completely embarrassed by the sudden proposal. He lowers his gaze, stammers, and quietly apologizes. Although he values her feelings, he explains that he never even thought about marriage and is not able to discuss it now. Unchanged after his refusal, she pushes him back onto the bed. She hints, if it doesn't work now, they can just make it a done deal anyway, leaning over him and asking if that would be a problem. Just as she spoke, even before she could get her father's consent, the door to the room suddenly creaks and opens. His heart pounds in his chest as panic overwhelms him. He realizes how terrible it looks. The princess is pressing him against the spot just at the moment someone enters. When Milio quietly whispers his name, his mind spins. Who could it be? Amid the tension, a familiar voice cuts through, breaking into a shout, "Big brother." Klaus raises his gaze, eyes widening in horror. He realizes that his sister, Karen, has just entered at that very shameful moment. Regaining consciousness in bed, he saw that Princess Milia was sitting nearby. He looked up embarrassedly as soon as she said his name, while the communication device lay on the table nearby. Before he could respond, she suddenly hugged him tightly. With a shining, determined look, she introduced herself Milia, the first princess of the Huey Dent Kingdom, and without hesitation declared that she would become his sister. The moment is interrupted by a voice from the communication device. Karen appears on the screen wearing a face mask, her eyes full of shock. She demands to know what her brother is doing. Confused, Klaus orders her to wait, realizing that from the outside it looks really bad. The frame sharply returns to Princess Milia, and he panics over the catastrophic timing. He apologizes incessantly, explaining that he has no excuses, but he cannot allow his own sister to hate him. She listens to his sincere request, and understanding flashes in her eyes. She assures him everything is clear and admits that she herself does not want to lose her dear family. The resolution returns just at the moment when she tells him, for now she will stay, but she does not intend to give up, and adds that she does not want to be hated, but she is not to be scared off. He tells her that he has no strength to worry about anything else except lifting his sister's curse. He invites her to use the room without hesitation as she leaves, and he returns to the device. His face changes, a wild determination breaks out in it, and he calls Karen to wait, promising to fix everything. At the other end of the connection, Karen's face is a mask of cold rage. She looks away from the screen and demands to be told who that princess was. In the small side window, Klaus shudders with horror. He realizes that his sister is now in a truly terrible mood. The brother's voice continued sounding through the device. He told how he was surrounded at the party and then pulled out of there. Then he told her that he learned about his own fate from the princess directly from her words. She listened attentively as he continued, aloud questioning how nobility from another country could even know about him. She was silent, absorbing his version of the story. His face flashed on the screen as he admitted everything. He said directly, it was he who asked Ursel to publicize his achievements. His eyes suddenly widened with tension as he asked why they treated him as if he were a criminal force. She finally answered and said, if his reputation grows, he will stand out, and she found that unpleasant. But despite everything, she admitted, she wants to be a support for him, and she hopes that over time everyone will eventually see only good in him. Her grip on the communication device tightens as she complains. Since she cannot be with him, this is the only thing she can do to support him. She seemed truly moved by his confession. He told her how kind she was and declared that she was the most important person in the world, a curse. A faint blush spread across her cheeks as she absorbed his sincere words. Her early anger vanished without a trace. Instead, a radiant smile appeared. Clutching the device, she joyfully exclaimed that she felt the same. She confirms that now they will be in touch every day. Mentioning that he has work at the reception, she earnestly asks him to rest well. After the last exchange of good night, their conversation ends. When the conversation ended, Klaus collapsed onto the bed and sighed heavily. His head was spinning with what he wanted to ask her to stop spreading rumors about him. She steals his determination. But if so, he understands it, and then he will have to work so hard to justify the reputation she has already created. Late that night, after the party ended, he cautiously peeks out from the doorway and checks if it is safe to return to his lodgings. He returns at the very end under the starry sky, announcing his return as he approaches closer. In his room, he finds the white tiger and Yoruba Rose waiting for him on the bed. The tiger greets him and says he was just about to fall asleep while waiting. Then he orders Klaus to touch the precious stone to contact Cecil. After the command, the class approaches and touches the object. A dazzling light flashes from it, and it explodes into countless fragments. Delight transports him to a new place, and he finds himself near ancient ruins alongside Ursel, Princess Milia, Shia Moslin, and others. Ursel recognizes the location, Shrine of Lemuel. Struck, Klaus clenches his face into determination, resolved to quickly solve this matter to return home. He and his companions appeared inside a spacious, dilapidated chamber where crumbling columns stretched into the darkness. Before them emerged a monster, a multi-headed dragon whose gigantic body coiled around a dais. One of the heads bent down, its reptilian eyes fixed on the small group. It found it amusing to see such feeble people, so it demanded to know why they had come. The beast's side struck him with a surge of pure terror. He recognized it, the evil of the dragon Ouroboros. The unclean, suffocating power of its magic squeezed his chest. Yet even fear tried to paralyze his body, and still from within rose another fierce determination to bring down this creature. In an instant, a powerful force flashed in the chamber. The dragon let out a deep, rumbling laugh. It echoed among the broken stones. Klaus's companions scattered in all directions, desperately trying to stay on their feet amid the chaos. The beast laughed triumphantly, its voice dripping with contempt. It claimed they were the only ones left and asked bitterly what they could possibly do now. Despair awakened a memory. He saw himself again as Cecil pressing on a young woman named Marin, forcing her to run. He begged her to run, even if she was the only one who could escape. She turned to him. The expression on her face was sadness and tenderness in equal measure. With a slight smile, she asked him to take care of the children, and her last words were a simple, sincere confession of love for him. Memory reached its terrible conclusion. He watched helplessly as blinding energy tore through space, snatching Marin and another young girl from his hands. His own voice echoed in his head, shouting her name with a desperate, futile plea as they disappeared. She froze in place as a colossal dragon began to glow before her. Its entire body was wrapped in ephemeral ribbons of light. A powerful spell flared in the chamber, the eternal seal. But the seal proved insufficient. With an ugly crunch, the dragon's huge jaws snapped shut, and the magical restraint shattered completely. At the fracture site, a fragment of dark energy burst forth, and Klaus covered his eyes from the explosion. When the dragon forces surged forward, another presence appeared. A creature with a pure white body emerged, its mane and tail blazing with celestial fire. It stood as if with otherworldly grace. From its masked face grew a single horn spiraling upward, then vanished. The appearance of this new creature triggered a whole chain of memories in Klaus, pulling him into another time, another tragedy. He was a child again, eyes wide with horror. His voice trembled as he called the name. He remembered the beast from that day. Its name is a whisper in his head. Crew, he and Marin were still children then, drawn into the very center of the boundless whirlwind of power roaring around them. Memory became sharper, more painful. He fell to his knees and beat the ground with his fists in agony, crying out the name Marin. The relentless burden of his own helplessness crashed down on Hema, feeling he could never erase. He turned his tear-streaked face to the beast. His voice choked with sobs, apologized, swearing he would never again leave him alone for any reason. Nearby, Marin lay motionless on the cold ground. While the boy mourned the loss, an invisible figure stretched down and grasped in its hand the fallen star-like object. The figure felt the pure, strong magic emanating from it. The beast Ku again shifted its gaze to the cloak-wrapped boy, the silent witness of the echo of the past. He is torn from his memories by Ursula's loud laughter. Klaus can only stare frozen and mutter frantically whether such a thing can even be true. Laughter breaks off and is immediately replaced by a fit of mad coughing. The red-haired man next to him is barely breathing, and Klaus is trying with all his might to hold him back. The man gasps for air and exhales a name, Albert. Ursula lifts a shining, star-shaped object. Its light suddenly grows brighter. The scene dissolves into a new memory. Klaus stands next to Marin in front of the legendary beast crew. The memory jumps forward. He is greeted by a crowd wildly shouting and applauding. After he sealed Ouroboros, he was called Cecil, the leader of the demon slayers, and he was glorified by everyone without exception. The burden of this past glory and the current crisis overwhelm him. He exhales and gasps for air, and tears flow down his face. Somewhere they call his name, trying to break through his torment. His mind sinks even deeper into the past, to the time when he was little and lying sick in bed. Next to him curled a small tiger-striped creature, Kylan. He barely asks if the master is in pain somewhere, and when Kylan confirms, he sighs with relief. Good that they knew and could help. It turns out Kylan was the familiar of Saint Marin. The true purpose of a familiar is to be a vessel for the saint's power, and Kylan was to become a direct seal against Ouroboros. But since his power had not yet fully developed, he was told that his role was only purification. Memory again slides to a young man with hands folded in prayer. He gives thanks, acknowledging that Kylan protected them all from Ouroboros. Filled with sincere hope, he further pleads to protect a young girl named Karen. His prayer echoes in the boundless empty sky, where a dim, sad, apologetic silence hangs in the air. On the city street, Klaus walks with a book in his hand, and the little tiger comrade Kylan sits on his shoulder. Suddenly, his former boss, Fowl, appears before him. He angrily declares that Klaus has already bought enough. Fowl insists they need to rejoin the group, grumbling that the teleportation magical device is too expensive, and that an ordinary carriage would be quite suitable. He grabs Klaus by the shoulder and impatiently shouts his name. Klaus is silent, standing aside from Fowl and his two subordinates who are watching from behind. When the Falsmen move to physically pull Klaus back to the magical core, a powerful shockwave rises and throws him away. Princess Milia stands, stretching her hand forward. Right there, protective magic is born. The sudden stop leaves behind Fowl spits, wheezing and confusion, demanding to know what is happening. His subordinates, recovering after the explosion, angrily ask who this young woman is. She calmly asks if they tried to kidnap Klaus, explaining that she was enchanted by his wonderful presence and she followed him. She scrutinizes them and says, probably they are useless since they could not recognize his true value. Her commanding words made the man fall silent. Klaus, standing behind, exhales with relief. He is grateful for her unexpected health. He stumbled and fell to the ground, looking at her in surprise while Kylan sat down next to him. Princess Milia leaned toward him and formally asked permission to help him with his sister. Her face blooms with a warm, encouraging smile. She enthusiastically offers to search for Kylan together. Klaus, already holding both the little tiger and the Genbu, resembling a turtle, raises his gaze to her. Hope flickers in his eyes. He studies the map, relying on Princess Milia's information. Their companion, Alfred, confirms the guesses. For the first time, he senses Kylan's magical presence nearby. Before starting the search, Klaus thanks Alfred for providing them with the latest model of the long-distance communicator. Milia accepts questions about the equipment from the faculty, stating that it was quite natural. With the communication set up, Klaus gives the order to depart. Alfred leads the group now, including the dark-haired adventurer, and orders them to spread out and each independently comb their area. She agrees to the plan without hesitation. Traveling alone through the dense forest, she hears a sudden rustle from the nearest bush and sharply turns toward the sound. Her eyes widen with surprise as soon as she sees what is in front of her. Touching the communicator near her ear, she quietly whispers that she has found what they came for. Before her, in a puddle of water, stands a radiant, mythical creature. It is composed of warm, ethereal light that flashes with energy. The traveler's expression hardens with determination. She thinks. Finally, we have met. Silently speaks the unheard word to her mother and declares that now it is her turn, ready to fulfill her duty on the path. Standing in front of the innyard, the saint does not take her eyes off the small object in her hand. Her face is firm. She has resigned herself to her fate, steeling her own determination to become Kylan. In her thoughts, she repeats that this is a burden she will have to bear alone. A message for Klaus. Meanwhile, Alfred speaks with Selina, his tone restrainedly sincere. He asks her to allow him and his companions to stay nearby in case they are needed. She thanks him somewhat tiredly, apologizing for the trouble she causes someone named Hector. Where Klaus sincerely and excitedly talks to Karen, he says he turned to Selena for help. Karen beams, fists clenched, and she has the same enthusiasm for Selena and for her own involvement. In a moment of solitude, Selena raises her gaze, a barely noticeable but stubborn smile on her face. Only a little left, she thinks. Deep in the forest, Klaus mounts a white tiger. In the distance, he notices a figure and exclaims that he has finally found her. The tiger urges, sit down and quickly go. When they close the distance, Klaus's mind is feverish. He is unbearable how to take Iroko this scale. He is sure he must try. Ahead he sees the figure of Selena wrapped in a dark, threatening aura. Suddenly from the place where Selena stood, a blinding flash of light bursts out. Klaus grabs his eyes with his hand. From the radiant energy in the puddle of water appears a small snow-white mythical creature with a horned, masked face and a fiery mane. What is this? What is this light? Klaus exclaims in astonishment. Shock dissipates and in its place bursts recognition. Killen shouts at the top of his voice. Without any hesitation, he gives the order, "White tiger, bind him with your lightning." The great creature tears the silence with a mighty roar. It acknowledges the order and is ready to strike. Watched as Kylan tore away with incredible speed, a white trail and flame. White Tiger and Urabelos noted his agility and strength. Nearby, a traveler explained that Sen now controls Kylan's magic and asked if Klaus intended to be arrogant to catch this creature. He called out to Kylan, then passed the order to his companions. "You too, please," he asked, and sent forward White Tiger and Little Jinbu, ordering them to intercept the mythical creature. But before his mentors could reach the target, the scythe swordswoman rushed past them and leapt high into the air. She snatched Kylan mid-flight and instantly vanished into the sky. She froze in disbelief and shouted that it could fly. However, the woman next to him had a plan. She asked him to give her time, promising to catch Kylan and return his scales to him. She had only one thing left: his trust. Klaus, looking at her determined face, agreed. The braided fencer landed nearby, throwing a remark about Kylan's magic. She turned to Klaus with a soft smile, apologized, and brushed off her interference, saying it was nothing important, leaving him stunned by her casual behavior. Hiding in the nearby forests, the adventurer and the White Tiger watched the exchange. While they watched, Kylan took off again. A single thought echoed in his mind: mother. The next day they reached the town of Hugh Dent. Klaus glanced at one of its buildings with gratitude for the help he had received. She returns to Princess Milia, noticing her gloomy mood. He calms her, tells her not to be so depressed, and promises that he will return. When he gives him assurance, the archer Shuya firmly grabs his hand. Princess Milia, with tears in her eyes, asks why her father does not allow Shuya to cross the border with him. Shuya intervenes and says, as a guardian, he has a duty to protect both the holy beast and the lord of demons. He smiles warmly and immediately agrees, saying, of course. Princess Milia looks up at him, her face pleading and trembling, and asks him not to forget her. A blush spreads across her cheeks as soon as she realizes she has already gotten used to his presence. After exchanging farewells, the group passes through the city gates. Princess Milia stays behind and waves until they disappear from sight. The journey takes them out of the city into a dense forest. Thanks to the kindness of Duke Sarek, they travel with companions riding on the massive bodies of Adamantite and the White Tiger. While they travel, the braided swordswoman tells Klaus that the Clud family lives and has stayed behind. After that, she asks if everything is okay. She notices that he seems unaware that they are in Woodville. She talks about Terald, a nation generously gifted by nature. This wealth allows it to be mostly self-sufficient, so the state adopts a noticeable isolationist stance and minimal trade with other countries. He asks his companion if it is even possible to enter such a country. The woman with a headband explains. Entry into Terald is extremely difficult. The brightest ducal house and guardians of the holy beasts have been given special permission to stay since the founding of Cynofolia. She adds, even the authority of the great saint is not enough to allow them passage. Nearby, she looks ahead and feels that more problems lie ahead. Following his gaze, they see their goal on the horizon. A voice announces they have reached Reynold. On the shore, the sacred guardian and the holy creature Jinbu stand together looking across the water at the island state in the mountains. As the boat glides over the water, Klaus and his companions scrutinize the approaching shore. Their faces show anticipation, full of expectation. He steps over the majestic traditional gates, and his gaze is immediately drawn upward to the unique architecture of the city inside, while gentle petals slowly swirl in the air. Inside, a local man meets them, saying that he has never seen their style of clothing before. Klaus and the woman with the headband, who is surveying the scenery, freeze captivated by the beautiful and unfamiliar urban landscape. As they walk, he notices the streets are filled almost entirely with men. Suddenly, he is stopped by the thought of the strange reluctance to walk ahead of another man. His guide seems to read what he is silent about and explains, as foreigners they are kept under close watch. Nearby, two men with stone faces stand and observe them. Their gazes are sharp, targeted. He was still on edge, whispering to Ursula that the air in the city felt off, especially regarding Selena. but his companion seemed unaware, cheerfully indicating that they had found someone named Sakura. As if called by name, a young woman in a floral kimono lifted her gaze from the spot where she sat on the stone path. Petals swirled around and she solemnly addressed him, Demon Lord Klaus Finley, and introduced herself. Guardian of the Blue Dragons. He rushed to her side, urging her to stand and not devalue her own life. She was surprised by his concern, then listened as he explained that it was unbearable for him to be treated with such humiliating reverence, and asked maybe she could just treat him as an equal. She was enveloped by his kindness and she called him a merciful master. Then, as is proper, she introduced herself, Sakura Ferris, the guardian of the holy beast. While she spoke, Klaus could not help but notice a slight resemblance to Jinbu, and he wondered if she was another guardian from a foreign land. After the introductory words, Ursel urged him to move on. The group ascended a long stone staircase, heading towards the traditional manor courtyard, enclosed by a bamboo fence. They reached the residence and very soon sat on the open veranda, beginning a conversation with its inhabitants. During the conversation, Ursel asked Sakura if she had servants. She replied that she did not. Then Klaus intervened. He pointed out his own observation that the city seemed to be inhabited only by men and inquired if there was a reason for this. She explained, in Terald, it is considered customary that men work outside and women take care of the home. This rigid social structure, as she admitted, is the reason why women from foreign lands like herself are perceived as outsiders. While she spoke, Ursel noted, Sakura is an exceptionally skilled guardian. He believed she was best suited for any work that needed to be done outdoors. Klaus agreed, acknowledging that he and his companions could not endure the constant stares of the locals. Then she was offered a hot cup of tea steaming with vapor. She thought, back in her homeland, women like Karen and Selena worked just as she did, but here such contributions went unnoticed. Still, she quite liked the local tea. Her face lit up with a radiant smile framed by the illusion of cherry blossoms. She declared that the tea tasted wonderful and mused that she would probably get used to it. From a very short distance, Klaus and Karen watched as her genuine joy became visible. He observed her, noting, despite all her sternness, Sakura had an unusually gentle nature. Sakura then confessed. Although she had already gotten used to the customs of the country, she was still gnawed by deep sadness. Her efforts remained unnoticed by those around her. Just as Ursel began to speak about the blue dragon matter, a heavy thud shook the ground. A mighty dark-furred creature landed right in front of the veranda hastily and with incredible force threw everyone into confusion. In the midst of the commotion appeared a man with long, spiky, light hair, a smile from ear to ear. He called out to Sakura, announcing that he had kept her waiting and that it was time to go to meet the Lord of Demons. Sakura sharply raised her gaze, struck, addressing him as Rahaku, and asked what he was doing here because, in her opinion, the reception was already over. In response, Rahaku unfolded a pair of huge feathered wings and apologized for being late. Stunned by the sight, Klaus began to introduce himself as a representative of the Demon Lord. He is taken by surprise when the winged man introduces himself, bowing Rahaku Gilburn, the first prince of the Ringgold Kingdom. Embarrassed, Klaus thanks him for his courtesy. Rahaku smiles warmly and hints that it would be easier if they spoke more simply. He is more accustomed to that. While they stand still, Sakura quietly offers Rahaku to prepare some tea for him. Then she gently places her hand on his shoulder to attract his attention. In response, Rahaku turns to her with a reassuring smile and tells her not to worry. Then he asks if he can borrow the child. While Rahaku and Sakura walk away, Klaus silently watches them and wonders alone why the prince himself makes such a request. Later, the team sits together while Ursel talks about the critical state of affairs. Under no circumstances should they wake the blue dragon. Ursel wanted to study Kailan's healing magic, but the hunt for the creature was stopped. Sakura adds, it was the appearance of the blue dragon that caused people to be forbidden from entering the mountains for several days. After that, Ursel announces that their group will search for Kailan and officially asks for cooperation from Klaus and his companions. Klaus immediately agrees. Ursel's face becomes stern as he asks a critical question. Is their journey really a race against time? He raises his gaze, a drop of sweat shines on his forehead, and uncertainly confirms Ursel's conclusion. Accepting his answer, Ursel acknowledges the situation and apologizes for himself for the day, turning to leave the room. As he goes, his thoughts touch on the problematic nature of this country, leaving Klaus anxiously wondering what just happened. In the Ringolden, Klaus sits in deep concentration and nearby a bouquet of flowers. Everything in his head boils down to one goal, to expel the curse Uroboros. He incessantly contemplates a specific healing magic one he believes can finally cure his sister, Karen. He pulls one flower from the bouquet, and on his face is a mixture of hope and apology. Thanks to training from Morris the Mage, his control over magic has greatly increased. A wave of confidence washes over him. He now believes he can finally do it. A complex magical sigil ignites over the delicate flower. His thoughts drift to Karen. He imagines how weakened she is, how her hands are bound by the dark marks of her affliction. He understands. This flower is the closest analog to her curse that he has at all. With utmost concentration, he directs magic into the stem and deliberately shifts its wavelength to replicate the life-draining properties of the curse. The flower petrifies and an audible click sounds. This experiment is the culmination of long hours spent poring over texts. He carefully studies the curse, noting how it seems to clog the very vessels of life just like a blockage in a blood vessel. Having completed the magical scan of the afflicted flower, he prepares for the next decisive step. Now he must infuse the cursed object with his own healing magic, a delicate and dangerous procedure. A soft light begins to flicker in his palm. A brilliant flash of light bursts from his palms as he releases his power. But very quickly he realizes how difficult this is. A mere magical flooding of the flower is not enough. He must extract the poisonous, malevolent energy of the curse and cleanse it. The flower stubbornly remains petrified, evidence of how hard it is to accomplish the task. Somewhere else on a soft cushion lies a magical communication device. Through it, Klaus's voice hums with unbreakable determination. He will do this for Karen, relying on his own strength, not on Kylan. In her room, Karen clutches the device. Her face, carved with anxiety due to the sudden silence, burns with a deep desire to finally see her brother. And then a restless thought flashes in her mind. If there were no blood relation between them, would he still consider her his precious sister? The confused reaction that came through the communication device struck Klaus with a wave of panic. He stared at the device, shouting apologies to Karen, and his voice trembled with anxiety. In her room, Karen quickly recovered and explained that it was already late and that she had fainted briefly. With a gentle smile, she recalled and said that once in childhood those were her words. She quietly lamented that she constantly has no time. 24 hours a day is simply not enough. And she remembered how desperately she worked to master healing magic. A voice chuckled through the device and admitted, he remembers. He recalled her childhood declaration that she wanted to be his bride and thoughtfully mused that Karen from the past was so sincere and so sweet. Hearing this, Karen puffed her cheeks in playful offense and replied, "She is no longer just sweet, she has grown strong and beautiful too." Then she spoke quietly and a blush crept across her cheeks. Once she belonged only to him. She seemed not to have considered the weight of her own words. She simply advised her not to twist herself too hard before saying goodbye and sending her to sleep. Karen began to respond, but stopped at the thought hung in the air and never left her lips. The connection was lost. She jerked sharply and blushed as she processed his words. What was that supposed to mean? She buried her face in the pillow. A shocking possibility blossomed in her mind. Could that really have been his true goal? She twitched in bed, completely embarrassed. The thought that as soon as she confessed her feelings, he might simply accept them without any fuss clung to her, and she couldn't get this possibility out of her head. She sat upright and boldly straight. New, urgent thoughts struck her. Could it be he didn't even know they were not related by blood? The realization hit her with stunning force. It was necessary to find out everything for sure. Klaus explains to his companions, Kalana has not been found yet, but his ability to fly makes him an invaluable asset for their search. Ursel listens with a weary expression, while Alfred remains impassive. When they push forward through the forest, Serafina announces that they have arrived and Klaus is thrown off balance by this. Beside them, Ursel tells the others that recruiting Blue Dragon will significantly expand the search area. And this finds resolute support. Ahead opens a dizzying waterfall. It falls from a steep cliff, raising sprays. Serafina voices admiration for the view and Klaus responds to her, then a moment later with a note of sadness says he wishes Karen could see it too. Confirming her words, Serafina turns to him and notices how much he cares about Karen. She gives a soft smile and a simple, sincere agreement. In a moment while he froze and cut through the pause in the clearing, Kylan suddenly growled, felt that something unfamiliar had appeared nearby. Despite the obstacle, Klaus did not look away. He was sure that Blue Dragon was close. His words are immediately confirmed. From the surrounding forest bursts a majestic blue dragon, a powerful spectacle that takes one's breath away. In response to the creature's appearance, Ursel abruptly steps forward and declares his intention to cast a spell to bring down the dragon. Klaus reacts with anxiety, sensing no hostility in the beastly pure magical energy. Meanwhile, Kylan urgently calls for his master. As soon as he manages to react, Sakura and Rahako stand between the group and the dragon. Rahako announces they are bait, Sakura draws her blade and the blue dragon lunges to attack. Serafina watches in horror, fearing the blow could cause havoc. Klaus freezes in shock and Uroboros shouts that his magic is nullified, wondering if the dragon has gone mad. He watches as Sakura, with a fierce smile, unleashes a powerful sword technique called Absolute Sky. She commands the blue dragon to fall to the ground, while Rahako flies upward through the air and approaches the beast. The strike force throws the dragon in the sky. It flips over, tearing out pain with a scream. Klaus freezes in shock, amazed at how easily she wields such a colossal sword. Alfred shouts joyfully, supporting her, while Rahako orders Jinbu to protect everyone on the ground. He understands his consciousness disconnectability is pointless because he cannot establish direct contact with the dragon. He sees that Sakura and Rahako act in tandem, luring the beast from the heights. Beside him, Alpha confirms the strategy. Seizing the moment, he urges the white tiger forward and shouts for it to move now. He orders the beast to keep its eyes on the blue dragon, declaring that they will face him together. Great Beast response launches into the air with a powerful leap. He stays balanced on her back, spreading his arms wide as he prepares to make his move. And just as he shortens the distance, the blue dragon lets out a deafening roar. A stream of pure power crushes him, and he whimpers as a magical sigil flares on his arm. Consciousness fades, darkens. And then the stunned white tiger falls from the sky. Before it can hit the ground, the blue dragon grabs it in its jaws with its mighty fangs. Below, Alfred watches in horror, noting the blatant audacity of the demon lord's power. The dragon's eyes remain empty. Alfred screams that his consciousness has not returned. Everyone is shocked. The monster swallows the white tiger whole. Sakura panics, shouting Klaus's name, while Rihaku and Jinbu watch the terrible event with her. Inside the beast, Klaus finds himself surrounded by the infected magic of the blue dragon. He realizes, this resembles the same haze he encountered before, and it must be cleansed quickly. Apologizing for the pain he is about to cause, Klaus decides to use his own power and forcibly restore the dragon's magic. After his decision, a glowing sigil flares on his hand. As soon as he finishes scanning the dragon's energy, he is struck by the thought of the voice he just heard. Shouting sharply, he releases his power and initiates a forced magical recovery. It envelops the furious creature in dazzling light. The spell works instantly. Beyond the boundaries, the white tiger safely spills out of the blue dragon's jaws. The dragon itself, purified and radiant, peacefully rises into the sky while Rihaku and others watch in shocked silence, unable to comprehend whether he has truly regained consciousness. Klaus atop the calm blue dragon solemnly introduces himself as its new master, gently saying that everything is fine and that the creature is no longer alone. The dragon looks at him, tears of relief and gratitude gathering in its eyes. Filled with joy, blue dragon gently cuddles Klaus. She conveys that she had long dreamed of meeting him and that since Uroboros was taken, she had been lonely. Klaus comforts the great beast, strokes his muzzle and praises him for holding on so long. The dragon continues its friendly display, confidently confirming that Klaus is its master. Klaus calms it again and notes to himself how emotional it is, completely unlike its previous behavior. He again wonders who could have been the voice he heard just before casting his spell. When they descend back to the ground, Klaus turns to Sakura and praises her, calling her sword dance beautiful. Embarrassed, Sakura blushes and denies that it is something to be praised for. Nearby, Rihaku watches their interaction with a knowing smile. He turns to those gathered: Rihaku, Sakura, Alfred, Seraphina, and Sacred Beasts, and sincerely thanks them for their help. Then he approaches Rihaku directly, whose wingman recognizes him as Klaus Dono, indicating he already knew about him, and says he has a request for him. He seized Klaus and with fierce determination made a request. He asked if Klaus would join him to change this country. The sudden proposal stunned Klaus, and he immediately ordered Sakura to wait. She in turn looked at Rihaku in disbelief and asked what he was really saying. In a moment, two sat opposite each other. Nearby lay a freshly tamed blue dragon. Klaus admitted that the strict rules and unchanging mindset in the country had long weighed on his mind. Rihaku listened carefully, then pointed out that Klaus, as a prince, had not yet been tainted by the nations and their ingrained customs. Scorching these words with his gaze, Klaus made a decision. He declared that if Prince Rihaku truly dared to take his own side, he would provide full cooperation, though he did not understand exactly how they would do it. Rihaku admitted he had long tried to make changes alone and was now on the verge of failure. His face hardened as soon as he revealed his true, sharp plan. He wanted Klaus to join him and put an end to the current king of their nation. Imagining a stern monarch before him, Rihaku declared his determination to change the country no matter the cost. Rihaku's thoughts turn into an icy precise betrayal, to destroy the king. The hidden statement hangs in the air and Sakura exhales sharply, her eyes wide with disbelief. Shock is felt on the skin, but it is Klaus who steps forward to confront the prince. He firmly states that he cannot accept Sakura's position and demands to know why Rihaku is considering rebellion, emphasizing that this should not become a norm. His face hardens with determination and Rihaku explains that he has long been convinced there is something fundamentally wrong with their country. He reveals that his own mother was expelled simply because she was a foreigner. Sakura is shaken by what she sees and immediately shouts a question about why Prince Rihaku and even Klaus are now involved in such a story. Klaus is still processing what he heard, so he asks why Rihaku would serve the princess if his own father did not approve of his mother. Rihaku's thoughts repeatedly surface to his father, the King Terald, and his torment emerges in memory. The king had often tried to convince his own mother to accept Rihaku, but all his requests were rejected each time. Memories fade and silence covers the group. The conversation has already passed over the fact that the government has not changed, and that appeals were made to Uroboros and Klaus's party to carry out the mission of conquest, and clenches his fists, biting into the ground beneath him. Rihaku declares, for the sake of his mother and for the sake of women like Sakura, intends to start a rebellion. Then he suddenly throws himself to the ground, bows his head low, a gesture of deep submission. He admits that his request is audacious, but still begs Klaus and his companions to help him change the country. Laos with a firm expression acknowledges the prince's determination. He confirms that, as he said earlier, here he will provide his cooperation. As soon as he heard this, Rahaku lit up and turned to his companions. Sakura Ferris excitedly declared that with Prince Rahaku as the new king, they would gradually change the country. Rahaku agreed but urged quick action. He would not stay long, so they needed to immediately devise a strategy. Gathered together inside, he explains to the group. His words no longer reach the father king. Therefore, he wants to borrow power from Klaus, thinking that the king will listen to the words of the demon lords. Sakura cautiously points out, if their request is denied, they will have to fight the whole country and it will be a brutal battle for Klaus and his friends. Rahaku agrees but reveals that they have a chance. A look outside, defining the goal and the proclamation of the strongest generalization in the nation's history. Rahaku declares that he will win with one single, decisive strike. Late that night under the crescent moon, Klaus stands on the veranda and muses to himself how he even agreed to this. Ursula calls him from behind, and Kailan rests on his shoulder. He explains his decision to Ursula. If he is asked for help as the Lord of Demons, then he must respond in the same way. Nearby, Rahaku adds, he cannot forgive a world where people are not recognized for their true worth. He says that victory over Aizen will cause the army's fighting spirit to fall lower than ever, and Alpha and Ursula agree. So this becomes the heart of their strategy. Sakura listens. Her eyes barely widen as she recalls the state the great saint was in before and suddenly realizes the full weight of the situation. Arahaka watches as the blue dragon coils around Klaus's shoulders and notes to himself, the young man has definitely grown. Under the starry night sky, an invisible figure bitterly laments their situation, wondering where their elder is, and complaining that the boss does not listen. The scene sharply changes. Before us towers Renarudo Castle, a multi-tiered structure rising into the sky. The blue dragon flies toward it, grown to colossal size, and Klaus confidently sits on its back. Below, a crowd of Taro soldiers freezes in shock and points upward. Someone shouts that this is the blue dragon and that someone is riding it. The great beast lands in the castle courtyard with a thunderous crash, raising clouds of dust. The clouds disperse, and she steadily moves forward before the stunned guards. He clenches his fist, gathers his spirit. He must hold himself with dignity and grandeur. Taking a step forward, he addresses the soldiers with an authoritative voice. He introduces himself as Klaus Finley, says he has brought the mad blue dragon to its senses, and has come because he has something to confirm to the king. This is the security department. His steps do not stop, and rumors already whisper in the air as he makes his way through their ranks straight to the main controls. He stubbornly looks ahead. In his voice, unwavering determination and a clear command cuts through the space, ordering everyone to step aside. At his command, the Terrell guards part, forming a passage. He strides forward confidently and purposefully between the rows. His advance stops as soon as a voice addresses him. The orator confirms, as the great saint wrote in the letter, he truly verified the existence of demon emperors. A man in luxurious robes, a speaker, kneels before him, placing his palm on the hilt of a sword. He introduces himself, Eisencrowd, a general serving the nation of Terrell. He looks down at the general kneeling and says, this is not the reception he expected. Then he clarifies his only goal, an audience with the king. Eisencrowd raises his eyes and assures him that everything is clear. He explains that he has already delivered the message to His Majesty and apologizes for any perceived lack of courtesy. As soon as the formalities were behind them, he raised his eyes, stood up, and gestured towards the open doors of the fortress, inviting Klaus to follow him, while the little blue dragon peeking from behind Klaus's shoulder watched with nervous excitement. For now, the group watches everything happening from a distant position. Alfred, squinting through the spyglass, smiles with relief and says that Klaus is safe. Nearby, Xia Mao's Lin expresses concern. Klaus looks incredibly conspicuous right now. He looks at the distant castle and notices that this development will make it easier for them to act and outpace his father. Then Alpha asks Shuya if he is ready to follow Prince Rahaku, and then says that Klaus has already arrived at the castle and that they need to send the signal. While these plans unfolded, Sakura Ferris sank into her own thoughts. She recalled the image of a man from another land. He loved his wife but kept many other women as well. She decided that she could not allow everything to go as before, just as Klaus had warned. Her determination met the same gray and stubborn steadfastness of Shuya. He said that, although he hoped to support Prince Rahaku without bloodshed, if the king did not want to change, they would have to act stubbornly. After that, he gave a solemn oath. If necessary, he himself would take his own father's head, and then he urged them to move forward. At that very moment, in the grand gate of Reynolds Castle, the voice of the guard rang out. He announced the arrival of the demon emperor Klaus Finley. He was led down a long corridor into a huge audience hall, where at the very end waited a single figure. The figureea man with a noticeable top note stepped forward and introduced himself with a broad smile as Usraba Kaka from Reynolds' kingdom. He solemnly thanked Klaus for taming Holy Beast. In response, Osraba Katka told him that a banquet had been prepared for him and invited him to just relax, but Klaus refused. He did not need a banquet. There was something more important that needed to be confirmed. His gaze swept over the gathered court as he asked a direct question. Did they know that Sakura Ferris, the Blue Dragon Guard, lived in conditions where she was properly unnoticed and uncared for? He concludes his speech in the stunt court, stating that for a woman like Sakura, this is exactly how their country acts in this situation. And this is precisely the response that should have been expected. In response, Osrabatsa tries to reason with him, insisting that the main role-protecting Herbie nature should be a man's job. He asks if Klaus, as a demon lord, understands this basic principle. The mocking, indulgent words of the official flare up in Klaus's gaze with a spark of rage. He suddenly realized with horror slowly overwhelming him that their main companion disappeared not for any other reason, but simply because she is a woman. Without moving from his reaction, Osraba Kaka continues and says that this is just a custom of their country, something people have accepted. Then he asks, is Klaus really convinced by this explanation? He brushes off the official's excuses with a facial expression, turns his head, and shouts a completely different name, Prince Rahaku. As if on command, the huge double doors to the chamber suddenly open, and Prince Rahaku, flanked by his officials from the retinue, appears. Asraba Katka freezes in shock as the prince addresses him and announces that he has delivered the demon lord's message exactly as ordered. Then he steps forward and shows a stack of documents. Rihaku explains, there are testimonies and investigative reports about the treatment of Sakura from the moment of her arrival, as well as petitions from other women who want to work. The court is boiling, they demand evidence and reject the papers. The challenge shatters Urabri Kaka's composure, roars that women are patient children, just like cattle, and they should stay home and be silent. Hearing this, Rihaku looks at his father with deep disappointment and says it is a disgrace. He raises his voice and his statement echoes in the hall. He proclaims, with the impeachment of Asraba Katka and Rahaka Gilvern, the first prince will henceforth ascend the throne as the new king of Riddle. He hit his father so hard that the blow shattered physical strength. Asraba opened his eyes wide, and in a burst of pure, merciless, fierce anger his face twisted with tension. He was trembling all over with sweat and could not comprehend the audacity of this coup. Shock scatters with explosive anger. You are a disgrace. He growls, poking with a trembling finger. He orders the royal guard to immediately seize the audacious invaders. By the king's order, the guards simultaneously draw their swords. The sharp clang of steel spreads through the air as they close the circle around Klaus, Rahaku, and their companions. Surrounded, Klaus turns to Rahaku and calmly says that since his father made the first move, he will deal with the enemies inside the castle. Rahaku agrees he will take care of the others. They agree to meet in the courtyard. When the plans are ready, Klaus shouts the name Blue Dragon and immediately orders all allied soldiers to descend into the courtyard at once. The great beast responds instantly, recognizing the call of its master. It bursts into the throne room, scattering the guards and causing chaos throughout the courtyard while Rahakai watches, frozen in amazement. As the blue dragon crashes into the building's facade, Klaus and Rahaku leap onto its back. Asraba Katka shouts for them to wait, but they are already airborne, destruction and rebellion left behind them. In the new, unfamiliar courtyard, Klaus summons his allies and calls the names of two sacred beasts. Jinbuon Bayako behind him calls a giant white dragon, and he himself stands ready. Nearby appears a great white tiger. Both stand before the formation of armed soldiers. All the power of his allies is revealed as a colossal turtle Genbu joins them. Serafina sits on the white tiger Bayako. The assembled company looks at the shabby soldiers. They just stare and freeze in silent shock, unable to look away from this display of power. Among the soldiers steps forward a man with trimmed mustaches, Hagati, named Eisenkraut. He emerges, smiling broadly, and says he never thought not in his life he would see such a spectacle. But Klaus looks back with concern. A drop of sweat appears on his face as he realizes the situation is far from simple. Eisen's face becomes sterner as he introduces himself as the shogun of the state's army, and declares that his position does not allow him to simply stand aside as a spectator. Addressing Klaus directly, Klaus responds by raising a radiant magical crest, and from it burst forth the names of his abilities, Limit Break and Divine Awakening. A focused gaze, the eyes seem to ask without ceremony for permission to spar to test Klaus's strength. His inner resolve grows stronger. Klaus looks him straight in the eyes and declares that he accepts the challenge. In the large courtyard, the duel is about to begin. Klaus and Eisenkraut stand opposite each other, surrounded by Terold soldiers. Eisen smiles crookedly, confident. With the demon emperor on their side, victory is guaranteed. Suddenly, he roars at Klaus and he froze with wide-open eyes in surprise. Eisen orders him to stop staring and get to work. In the courtyard, blows sound during the guards sparring in the distance. Eisen apologizes and admits he is too excited to remain calm. Klaus quietly agrees, saying he feels the same, and heartily laughs at Klaus's manner of speaking, and then declares that if Klaus follows him, victory will be theirs. He continues looking closely. Klaus seems shy, but it doesn't matter. From now on, he declares they are comrades. Klaus looks further, a little stunned by the man's wild energy. Then he asks if Klaus has a weapon. Klaus replies that he himself is the weapon. Eisen, intrigued, asks if he is a martial arts master or a sorcerer, then suggests they both fight unarmed barehanded. Without saying another word, he sharply lunged forward and thrust Ahidand, swinging the wooden training sword, struck with incredible force. This caught Klaus by surprise. Klaus jumps out of the attack with incredible speed. The wooden sword cracks against the ground and he precisely catches a fragment from the air. Eyes and gaze freeze in impression, but Klaus already understands. His opponent noticed the secret in his palm. He is not a sorcerer. He cannot find a gap. The eyes continuously swing a wooden sword and he is forced to keep his distance. The wooden blade cuts through the air. Eisen asks why he does not use magic. This catches Klaus by surprise. He realizes Eisen is deliberately trying to prevent him from casting any spell. Where he can only try to react, the blade strikes him squarely in the back. The blow stuns him and a sharp realization pierces his mind. He has been cut, he is bleeding. He clutches his chest and marvels at his incredible recovery speed. The deep wound has already healed. Yet even with this advantage, he understands there is no noticeable pattern in Eisen's attacks that can be exploited. His opponent notices the quick recovery. He nods, looks more closely, and smiles slyly, acknowledging that fighting and healing at the same time is probably difficult, while he presses his attack. He understands that when recovering, pushing the body to the limit will only break it. He must finish the fight before sustaining even greater injuries. A weak magical sigil flares above his chest as he prepares for the next move. Dodging another powerful swing, Eisen comments again on how difficult his situation is. Without stopping, Klaus thrusts his palm into the ground. A complex magical circle spreads beneath him as he announces his impending attack. Eisen is faster. He spins a devastating technique, Thunder God Strike, a powerful blow infused with lightning. At the same moment, Klaus's own spell activates. A giant wall of torn eyes rises, crashing into the strike like a current. When the thunder of lightning and cold subsides, Klaus slams his palm into the ground with a thud. The magical sigil flares brightly, and he releases the spell Absolute Zero Blood, commanding the moisture in the soil to freeze instantly. The spell takes effect immediately. Eisen lowers his gaze and is stunned to see his legs instantly trapped in shattered ice that has frozen him solid. He realizes he has been caught just as Klaus lunges forward. He instantly closes the distance. A ball of agitated magical energy crackles in his open palm. When the target is immobilized, he declares that he has succeeded. He thrusts the orb of power directly into Eisen's chest. The blow unleashes inhuman strength, and through clenched teeth, Klaus confirms his opponent has lost consciousness. The strike throws Eisen back onto the dusty ground, and his sword clangs sharply nearby. Klaus stands over him, breathing heavily from the tension. The victory is already secured. From the side, Sakura Ferris watches, stunned, unable to believe her own eyes. She quietly repeats both parts and summarizes the names, unable to comprehend exactly how the duel ended. The strike passes through the surrounding soldiers. They spring into action, regrouping and refusing to retreat. They declare their pride as Reynolds' men and vow to fight to the last. Klaus cuts them off, shouting for silence, and warns. They cannot match the White Tigers. His words are cut off as Eisen sits up, clutching his head and grumbling that he has a headache. Klaus stares, completely stunned, and thinks about what kind of man he must be if he recovers so quickly on his own. He freezes in shocked disbelief as Eisenkraut stands before him seemingly recovered. The warrior turns his back and says he no longer has the strength to continue the fight. He sighs heavily and looks at the man fallen on the ground. The difference in their strength, he admits, was absolute. Nearby, Sakura watches him, anxiety frozen on her face. Turning his gaze back to the opponent, he makes an official request. He orders his soldiers to cease the attack so they can resolve everything peacefully. The house is silent, stunned by the sudden turn of events. The small white tiger beside him confirms they were not hurt even a drop. An expression of gratitude passes over Eisen's face. He thanks them and begins to explain the true purpose of the Demon Emperor, to transform Terold into a peaceful nation. His words echo in Klaus. He remembers that this quarrel began with Rahaku's desire to change the country for the sake of its citizens. Eisen's face becomes thoughtful as he continues speaking. He believes that the prince, capable of moving the Demon Emperor, will surely create a strong nation. With the decision already made, he returns to the ranks of the gathered Teralt soldiers. He raises his hand and makes a powerful declaration to the Linalt people. He swears loyalty to Prince Rahaku, accepting him as the new king. He fell to his knees in the grass. His oath was given. Before Klaus, he officially introduced himself as Eisenkraut, promised his own life, and swore loyalty to him. Laos, frozen in confusion, asked if he was truly sure. Calmly smiling, Eisen confirmed, and his words became a statement that caused muffled whispers of shock to ripple through the watching crowd. Then he switched to the next task and explained, now they must win the hearts of the soldiers. He officially requested that Klaus grant his power to Prince Rahaku. In the distance, Prince Rahaku himself was training with fierce determination. His blade flashed, and one wooden dummy fell after another in a flurry of movements. He drove himself to the brink of exhaustion, admitting that he could no longer continue. Yet he decided to press on, driven by the memory of his deceased parents and a sincere desire to change the country for the sake of the people. With a late voice, he cut off his thoughts. Usrabakaka thundered, demanding silence, stating that Guardian's affairs were none of his concern, and disdainfully added that it was pathetic for a woman from Xenopholia to just hide. He sharply directed his sharp words at Rihaku, asking if he truly understood the enormous responsibility that rests on the Guardian's watch. After that, his gaze fell on Sakura. He identified her as a representative of the most beautiful ducal house of Xenopholia, one of the four great ducal houses, and noted that with her comes the mighty divine protection of the great saint. Rihaku turns to Sakura, his face stern. He says, if they fail now, they will definitely be expelled as incapable rulers. Sakura lowers her gaze, admitting that she had not realized the full weight because no one had ever told her about it. Then his attention switches to Usrabakaka. Rihaku says he does not expect forgiveness, but intends to protect Sakura even if he has to borrow power from Klaus. Usrabakaka's face twists with rage, saying that is exactly why Rihaku cannot be forgiven. With a hoarse curse, he draws a blade fiercely curved, and when he lunges forward, its polished surface blinds with its shine. He presses the cold steel to Rihaku's throat, his eyes flashing with fury. He growls fiercely, saying Rihaku was wrong to believe in him and let him live. Rihaku holds his gaze without flinching. Without hesitation, Rihaku quietly offers a single restrained apologetic guilt. He is motionless as a stone, accepting the threat from us, and above him looms Robokaka, the blade of constant deadly pressure. His silence is suddenly broken by a memory, a vision of his mother, a warm and smiling face as she once looked at him when he was a child. The memory firmly roots his determination. Sakura, watching anxiously, sees the focus flare again in Rihaku's eyes, and he silently, absolutely, and forever makes a vow. He will protect this country. He did not flinch when we cut the katka. With fierce clamor, he rushed at the strike like a whirlwind and swung his blade. The weapon sliced the air, leaving behind an icy aura, but Rihaku's gaze remained unchanged, his resolve unshaken. In sudden darkness, a heavy, damp, muffled knocking sounded. That was the result of his decision. Snow is falling, and above the tall pagoda fireworks flare, a signal marking the end of the conflict. On the balcony below, Eisenkraut cannot hide his amazement at the icy magical spectacle he just witnessed, while Klaus quietly focuses on the words of Prince Rihaku. Demonstrates another power, casting an additional healing spell, and it manifests as a bright, complex sigil. Eisenkraut freezes in shock, realizing he is witnessing the true power of the demon lord as the blue dragon, previously encased in ice, begins to thaw. The small companion Jinbu stands nearby. He shifts his gaze to the others and formally requests that General Eisen and Sakura accompany him. The highest level of a Sagoda, the entire group watches as the now healed blue dragon freely soars into the sky. And far below, inside the structure, Asurabikaka still remains kneeling on the floor in defeat. The immediate crisis has been stopped. Eisenkraut turns to Prince Rihaku with a grim face and directly asks if the prince himself killed the king. Haku confesses he was incited by the demon lord. He found out that the king no longer cared about the country's interests and apologizes for not reporting it earlier. Positioned on the floor, our thief Kaka speaks with bitter humility. He admits that his mother taught him both ice magic and fencing, but says he was unlucky to encounter the refined skills of the general, which he essentially could not handle. Undergoing harsh training, Rihaku places his hand on his chest and declares that from this day he will change the country. Watching him, Klaus affirms his own dedication and says, until the prince's feelings change, his own will not change either. Eisenkraut firmly grabs Rigaku's hand. His face is firm and unyielding. Rigaku declares that for the sake of the country's future, Eisen must follow him as King Rigaku. Without hesitation for a moment, Eisen agrees. He turns his attention to Klaus and Sakura and asks them to hear his wishes regarding the soldiers. Klaus, with a neutral face, looks at him and asks what he plans to do next. Rihaku admits to Eisen, changing the deeply rooted mindset of the people will be incredibly difficult. Eisen agrees, saying it will definitely take a long time and require titanic efforts. Despite the challenge, Sakura suddenly turns around and her voice insists there is no other way but to do it. Rihaku calls her name, surprised by her resolute reply. Resolve seems to drive Rihaku even more crazy. She looks at her and he, choking with passion, asks if she will stay close to help create a nation where everyone can live in freedom. Seeing this clash, Klaus smiles brightly. He declares that his journey ends here and expresses gratitude. In response, Rihaku bows deeply, thanking him. Taku takes Klaus by the hand, giving a solemn promise to build a state where he can live freely, and only asks to wait for that day. The whole group watches as this promise is born. He looks at the sky and a quiet clarity passes over his features. From now on, the future of the new nation is entrusted to them. He did everything he could while Blue Dragon rose and flew away from the majestic pagoda. A palpable sense of irreversibility settled in his soul. From the streets below, Ouroboros watched them retreat and told the others it was a magnificent battle. While the group moved on, Alpha commented that Klaus is especially impressive. She agreed. It seemed Klaus was moving even better than during sparring. Hearing this, Klaus simply said it was nice to hear. His little dragon companion sitting on his shoulder suddenly spoke, called him master and asked to praise him for his hard work. He laughed softly, gently stroking the creature's head, but as soon as he did, the familiar figure cracked and began to disintegrate. The body dissolved into particles of light. In the other hand, a dark crystalline object pulsed. The sudden disappearance shocked his companions, and in alarm both Alfred and Shia shouted his name. An explosion of energy passed through Klaus backward, but instead of falling, he landed squarely on the back of the full-sized blue dragon, the very one that had appeared in a flash. He looked at his hands, and a smile of amazement froze on his face. Somewhere there a young woman named Luna held a similar crystalline object, and her eyes were full of anxiety. Before her and another woman, Nina, appeared a vision of a blue dragon with a rider. Luna explained that it was a memory of their sacred beasts after the death of a man named Cecil, and asked Nina to remember. In memory, the man known as Cecil froze in shocked stupor. He realized Luna and Nina were his own daughters along with Marin, and they had grown up that way. His astonishment turned to horror when he saw the sacred beast Kylan writhing in agony, distorted by the dark influence of Ouroboros. In despair, he shouted his name. Luna explained that they had no choice, so they would have to act instead of their father. Then she threw out the question hanging in the air. Cecil is dead, right? Before Cecil could process what he heard, Nina declared with grim determination. Now Luna is doomed to become the next great saint of Cynofolia. Then he understood. Their parents would never find out that the world Ouroboros was broken. Their due-tithe role left was to pass it on to the next generation and seal the Ouroboros from inside their mother. The burden of the inherited mission crushed him. Nina begged her sister to convey her love to her future husband and children, but Luna shouted in protest, rejecting the title Great Saint. Chilled, she rushed to call her elder sister, her voice trembling with despair. In despair, she jerked back and gripped her breath with horror. The corrupt Kylan lunged forward, his body twisted by dark energy. Mina still called her sister, her voice breaking in a hopeless display of hope. In response to the attack, Luna did not move from her place. She firmly pressed the beast's head with her palm and unleashed a powerful technique, Eternal Seal. The seal caught. While the Marines were suppressing the fading magic of the grotesque creature, it began to dissolve. From the remnants of its essence, the power of the moon raised a new Kylan, purified, tiny, and flawless. Vision shattered into pieces. Klaus jerked and sprang from the bed, gasping convulsively for air. He stared at the wooden ceiling. A vivid memory thudded in his head like an echo. At the foot of the bed, his little dragon friend slept, unflinching. Nothing disturbed his sleep.
As he expected a scene of chaos and destruction.
The power of the moon raised a new Kylan, purified, tiny, and flawless. Vision shattered into pieces. Looking back, he sees his little companions Kylan, Ouroboros, and a small dragon resting on the blanket nearby. When an image of water is placed on the nightstand, he quietly murmurs a word of thanks to everyone at once. He takes a sip of water, and his thoughts race at lightning speed. A drop of sweat runs down his forehead. He tries to process the endless stream of information that overwhelmed him in his dreams. His thoughts again collided with the vision of Luna. Now he understood. The current Kylan was not Marin's original companion. He was the successor, the one who inherited the magic to wield the sacred sword just as Luna once did. The truth turned out to be quite different from what he had been convinced of. The memory of his daughters standing before the distorted beast cements a chilling realization. The power of Ouroboros was too immense. Even with Kylan, they could never seal it forever. This hereditary duty is not a heroic mission. It is an endless cycle of human sacrifices. He grits his teeth and understands the terrible plan. Every time Ouroboros was reborn, the saints had to seal it again, dying in the process so the next generation would take their place. They were doomed to fall again and again, but they never gave up. The name Ouroboros echoes again in his head, but now with burning hatred. His fingers clench into a fist and fierce determination flashes in his eyes. He swears he will finally put an end to this. And then his thoughts sharply shift to the present. An unexpected question ripens in his mind. How much does Selena know? He questions her motives. Did Selena know his story when she asked for help finding Kylan? Doubt gnaws at him. Was her mother also a saint trapped in the same tragic cycle? The burden of his past embodied by the memory of Luna and the true Kylan weighs on him. He abruptly jumps out of the room, and the revelation about Kylan still echoes in his mind. He burns with the need for answers. He rushes down the corridor and sharply knocks on the door, calling Selena. But the room is empty. Selena stands somewhere else silently in the dense forest looming over the town and the nearby shore. You find her there. She screams his name as he rushes through the trees. Selena turns to him with a smile as if she understands everything and tells him to keep his eyes open. She confirms that he has finally awakened, and as she speaks, a small round device in her hand clicks and locks. Somewhere far away, a similar device begins to tick. Karen Finley stands on a sunny street. Her face sharply changes to worried as she looks down at the communicator in her hands. The device continues to beep from its place on the nightstand, next to an empty, neatly made bed. Holding it in her hands, Karen aloud wonders why her brother still hasn't woken up. She presses the communicator to her chest. She closes her eyes and quietly makes a wish. She longs to see him, her beloved Klaus. A harsh deadline for their meeting approaches. The path through the forest leads to a clearing, and here an unexpected discovery unfolds. Ancient stone ruins, half buried in the roots of grotesque giant trees. The men stop, tensely figuring out what this place is, and one of them says briefly, just ruins. They have no time to respond. Only a scream, and the bad raises a tornado incineration, causing a furious whirlwind that devours beasts, uprooting trees and earth from beneath their feet. A powerful whirlwind with insane force crashes directly into the ancient ruins. From a safe distance, its companions can only watch as the stone entrance cracks and begins to crumble under magical pressure. The petrified stone yields, and a tangible, terrifying presence rolls onto the clearing. The Birdman Fowl instantly breaks out in a cold sweat, eyes wide open. The horror is just beginning to reach him. He recognizes this feeling as an incredibly deep Eveloras he has never encountered before. His companions share his fear, all freeze in place. Their fear is immediately confirmed. From the broken passage bursts a stream of pure dark energy, shaking the very ground. Run! Wild roars burst from their chests, and three men abruptly turn and panic-stricken rush away to the safety of the trees. Far from the fury of chaos in the forest, Serafina sits by Klaus's bed. She cautiously asks where his mother is. Klaus, with an expression frozen in torment, confesses his parents have left, and it was the result of his own weakness. He clenches his fist, his voice hushed with guilt, explaining that their sacrifice is the reason he must now move forward. When Serafina expressed her gratitude, she was overwhelmed with relief. At least he was the one who could diagnose everything. But her thoughts had already turned to a more urgent matter. The power of Kylan was secretly gathering in the chest, and she had not managed to hide it securely in time for her homeland. Expression hardened with resolve. She declared that she would use her scales and ensure that Karen received them, then shouted her name, Selina, as if sealing the decision. Hearing this, Klaus rushed to her through the forest, his eyes widening in horror as he was just coming to his senses. He called out to her, demanding to name the true identity of Kylan, already suspecting the terrible truth. She turned to him and looked seriously, confirmed his fears. Admitted, he understood everything. The true form of Kylan is the embodiment of successive generations of saints. She explained the saints gave their own bodies to seal the demon Lord Ouroboros, and Kylan is the result of that final sacrifice. The revelation stunned Klaus and left him speechless. With a heavy heart, she confessed that she herself intended to follow the same path. A harsh silence fell between them as they continued walking through the forest. He suddenly stopped her, desperately grabbing her hand. He emphasized he himself chose to save her and would not allow her to throw away her life as his father had done. And he demanded, "Does she even imagine the pain of those left behind?" His words shook her, but her determination only hardened. She sharply replied that she had no reason to be a support for others and that Karen would never want that. Her voice broke with emotion. She declared that her only true desire was for Karen to become a real family to him, and she would achieve this at any cost. Her hand was still in his, but when the world began to shake wildly, his attention scattered. A huge dark structure burst from the ground, crosswise, and it pushed both Klaus and Serafina so that they lost their balance while he shouted her name. When the trembling subsided, Serafina let out a sharp whistle. Far away, a colossal pillar of black energy shot upward into the sky. Below, Klaus and his companion froze in shock, shouting for both Serafina and Karen to respond. Their screams were born of horror. Somewhere another young woman cried out in alarm. Rocky, like stone, roughness rapidly spread over her hands. Petrification was happening too fast. While she saw the distant dark energy, Klaus broke into a shout and called Serafina's name, horrified, realizing he would not be able to stop everything she had planned. He snatched his hand back, shouting for her to wait, but from her place, a powerful circular burst of energy whirled out and he was thrown backward through the air. When he was thrown back, one painful question suddenly flashed in his mind. Was it right to lose Serafina just to heal Karen? He clenched his fist in the air and his determination hardened. He could not accept this choice. He would save them both. Meanwhile, Serafina stood before her companions. She explained that Kylan had maintained the barrier through generations, but now its condition was becoming unstable. She turned to them with a calm smile and thanked them for everything. She gave the final order to abandon Kylan and quickly rushed off to deliver it to Karen and Klaus. While she spoke, a mythical creature appeared, now shrouded in eerie black flames. Far away, Klaus burst through the door and shouted Karen's name. He found her. She was lying unconscious on the stone floor, moaning. A strange, scaly pattern of her curse spread further over her arms and legs. Karen's consciousness was fading and she was struggling with pain. Klaus hovered over her and desperately tried to make her recognize him. He understood. Her awareness was slipping away and feverishly begged her to hold on, ordering her to survive what was still ahead. He places his hand on her chest and a glowing magical circle flares up and appears. Karen screams in agony as the energy flows into her. He anxiously notices that the power of the blue dragon is drawing into her while the danger rapidly increases. Suddenly nearby, a colossal shockwave of dark energy erupts, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Both he and Serafina shudder and turn back in shock to the explosion site. Before them are two monstrous shadow creatures wrapped in black flames. Serafina utters one single terrible sound, Ouroboros. When Kylan, mutilated, roars, Serafina's face hardens. She grits her teeth and aloud asks how much longer Ouroboros intends to torture them. Her thoughts drift to the memory of the grassy field. She calls her mother, her voice trembles with longing as she confesses how long and hard it was for her to go through it alone. Standing on the summit of this monstrous creature, she recalls her mother's faith, that it is Klaus who must save Karen and the whole world. Once she still dreamed of a peaceful future, but now she clenches her fists and declares, "Her time to act has come." When her little dragon spirit appears, it warns that one must not act recklessly, time is running out. Despite the pleas, Serafina silently pressures Klaus, endure a little longer. Meanwhile, as her own world fades to black, Karen in her final thought feels painful remorse she so wanted to marry Klaus. She lifts her gaze to Klaus, her voice barely audible but stubborn, and asks him to be happy. His eyes widen in despair and he exclaims that he will do it for her. He is ready for anything Jeven to marry her. He firmly squeezes her hand in his, but she gently pulls it out of his grip. A complex magical sigil begins to brightly flare on the open palm. Their eyes widened and they both caught the shock of a sudden surge of power. "I will save you now," Klaus shouts, and hope flares up again in his voice. Meanwhile, Serafina directs her own formidable power. Dark, feather-like energy whirls around her as she raises the shining artifact upward and calls the Eternal Seal. The effect is instantaneous. Blinding light covers Klaus and Karen as she releases the forced restoration of magical power. With grim determination, she pours her own life energy into the spell, willing to risk everything for the people she cares about most. Klaus holds his sister, his face contorted with despair, and he shouts for her to live. A beam of light flashes from his hand. He presses her to his sister's chest, activating a powerful ability, forced magical restoration. His eyes widen, another voice echoes in his head, and in memory, a foreign memory. He sees Serafina telling Pactius to pull himself together. She asks why Lumil is doing this and declares, "They are an obstacle, so they must be driven out of the Holy Land back to the demon world." Memories from an unfamiliar mind flood in a wave. His brain races madly, trying to comprehend what he just saw. He wonders whose memory it could have been as he looks down at Karen's still motionless body. He leans over her. Dark, miasmatic energy is drawn from her body and dissolves into nothingness right before his eyes. The ominous pattern on Karen's chest disappears completely. She groans faintly, and Klaus calls her name, his voice full of disbelief. Her eyes slowly tremble and she opens them. Stunned, she raises her gaze and recognizes her brother, quietly whispering his name as if asking. He exhales with relief and abruptly pulls her into exhausted embraces. Tears of joy stream down his face and he cries her name. He managed to heal her. She responds to the embrace and her tears flow freely. She says it's okay, she believed he would heal her. Apologizing for making him worry, she declares that he is the best older brother. Whispering words from her side, even with closed eyes, a faint blush on her cheeks. She wanted to marry Klaus. He looks at her, completely stunned, and his face also pales and flushes. He wonders if those were her true feelings. Shock disperses, only utter panic remains. He turns to the woven swordswoman and shouts that he must tell everyone. Selena is risking her life to seal Kylan, saving Karen. The swordswoman grabs his hand and pleads with him not to go, but he breaks free, demanding, "What does she mean?" He pulls away and insists that he must go and stop her. He explains, even if Karen's curse is already lifted, that alone is not enough. Seeing his unwavering determination, the swordswoman's face softens, but she yields only with reluctant consent. With her permission, Klaus raises his fist and, shouting the name Ronald, activates the transfer. They are somewhere in the forest thicket, where the sun glimmers through the leaves. Serafina and her two guards encounter the mythical creature, Kylan. Just behind them appears a gigantic shadow monster, and its presence presses so hard that it is difficult to breathe. When Serafina asks why they came, one of the guards exclaims in despair, "Sealing the beast is impossible." A shadowy creature looms over her, but Serafina addresses it calmly. She reports that she saw a black faucet seems to interfere with the seal. Her words tear the guard's shocked understanding. She is trying to deprive Ouroboros of power. Suddenly, Klaus and the swordswoman with braided blades appear and he calls Selena's name. The sudden exit makes the fencer flinch, looks at him in confusion. Why is he here and why does he call her by the name Karen? Ignoring her, Klaus rushes past like a whirlwind and speeds to Serafina, giving way to relief. He made it in time. He arrives just in time and calming the stunned Serafina says he has updated her and now everything is fine. She quietly thanks him and her gaze shifts to Karen. She firmly grabs the swordswoman's hand. Karen sharply turns around, her voice cuts through the air. It contains both anger and anxiety. She calls Serafina a fool, reproaches her for always giving away her own body and commands, never do that again. She grabs Serafina by the shoulders. Her face distorts with pain as she declares that she will never forgive such a reckless stunt. Serafina can only look back embarrassed and guilty. Her anger subsides as she pulls Serafina into a tight embrace, still grumbling but whispering a sincere thank you and confessing how much she cares for Serafina. Meanwhile, Serafina's guards return to Klaus for a response. One asks about the current situation and says that Serafina's seal is not working. Another immediately identifies the cause. The black Ouroboros fog is interfering, so she cannot complete the ritual. Taking command, Klaus orders the guards to continue monitoring the barrier's movements. Then he instructs Seraphine to protect Karen, and Karen is to draw the mythical beast Kylan onto herself and keep it inside the same barrier. Everyone agrees to the plan. Heron instantly raises the dance of the blazing blade of flame, locks the sword in fire and lunges at the beast. Watching her, Klaus notes with satisfaction, she has fully recovered and fights truly effectively. When the direct threat is finally stopped, his gaze fixes on the mighty Kylan. A new determination hardens in his expression, and he silently vows to save this creature too. He watches the alarm signal while Serafina and Karen unleash their attacks, and the mythical beast Kylan Death skillfully avoids them. A sharp thought pierces him. The creature is not just dodging it, is deliberately seeking a vulnerable spot in the barrier they have built. Zivarina finds what she was looking for and breaks through the barrier with a powerful strike. Klaus cries out her name in despair. His request seems to find an answer. In the sky above him appear three other sacred beasts, the white tiger, Genbu, and the blue dragon. Filled with new hope, he calls to all. In response, the blue dragon lets out a mighty roar that echoes across the field. Seizing the chance, Klaus places his hand on Kylan. A radiant magical sigil flares on his palm as he begins scanning. He feels the beast's consciousness fading and plunging into darkness. The connection breaks mercilessly. Kylan falls and jerking recoils backward. Karen and Serafina see the beast has lost consciousness. When he regains consciousness, Klaus realizes with shock that the flow of magic inside Kylan is completely different from what he felt in Karen. A dark aura flashes around the unconscious Kylan as his power begins a forced, brutal restoration. He freezes, unable to act, and notices a clear resemblance between Kylan and Blue Dragon. Serafina asks what they should do, and Blue Dragon addresses Klaus directly, hinting that the Master's power may not be enough, possibly due to a lack of his own training. He listened as the Blue Dragon explained something was wrong. Kylan's magic was most likely not yet complete. The white tiger interrupted him, insisting that as soon as Kylan remembered everything, his magic would be perfected. Nearby, Karen begged, let him go and save the beast. Meanwhile, Serafina knelt beside the others in Kylan, and concern froze on her face. She decided she could not allow her mother to see the sacred beast in such an exhausted state. Her thoughts were interrupted by Klaus's voice. He called her by name, his fist clenched to the edge as he insisted that he alone would put an end to this curse. He turned to his companions and declared that he would head to the city of Thousandless. The Serafina guards immediately promised to accompany him, and Karen insisted on going with him. Then Klaus addressed the sacred beasts and entrusted them with the care of Kylan. The blue dragon ordered Jinbu and the white tiger to sort things out there, and the tiger confirmed he understood. When Karen was sitting behind him, Klaus nudged the dragon to wait until he started to get up. Far beyond the vast desert, on the horizon hung the Thousandless city. A majestic fiery bird, a crimson bird, vermilion bird, rose towards it. Near the very ground below, Alfred and Shia anxiously watched as it approached. Alfred gawked at its incredible size, and a drop of sweat traced a line down his temple. He recognized it. Suzaku, the last of the sacred beasts, and unable to hold back, he aloud wondered why it had finally appeared in their city. Then he remembered that Klaus's party had moved to a place very similar. His anxiety grew as he once again pieced together Serafina's lack of contact and the message about Siku's sudden rage. Returning to Shuyu, he asked what they should do next. They watched as a broad-shouldered man named Rucky stood before them. Another man with dark hair announced their goal. They had to become a shield and hold the position until the Demon Emperor arrived. The man Rucky immediately charged into battle, spear forward, straight at the bulky, blood-soaked figure of the Crimson Bird. He swore to defend this land at the cost of his life. Beneath this madness, Klaus and Karen sat astride their little dragon. The mission was one: to release the final sacred beast.